After 99 Lives, as the villainous supporting female character, she decided she'd had enough. Why should an author, with a single sentence, have the power to so easily manipulate their lives, even forcing them into demotions, just to pave the way for the main characters? This time, she was determined to be a kind villainess. She would strive to change her villainous father, hoping to rewrite their tragic fate. This girl, scorned by all, was about to face her 99th death. She had done nothing wrong, yet because of her father's endless misdeeds, she was meeting such an end. Sometimes, it was truly frustrating. She was the daughter of a villain. Thinking this, she looked at the man before her, the man who was about to end her life. They had shared a similarly tragic childhood, yet because he was the male protagonist, he would become a king revered by all. Truly the author's favored son. The king declared that if she knelt and begged for mercy, she could take poison and end her own life, rather than suffer the agony of being pierced through the heart by an arrow. But for the girl, death was death. So, she defiantly told the king to bring it on. The king, enraged, raised his sword high. Just as the girl thought it was finally over, she found herself back in the familiar space between lives. Every character in that world was created by the author, broadly divided into protagonists and supporting characters. Protagonists possessed self-awareness, while supporting characters could only follow the author's script. Any deviation from the character settings was forbidden, and the girl was a professional supporting character, having played the villain's daughter 99 times. The monotonous villainous trope had driven her to the brink. Upon entering a story world, she would lose her own memories and become a puppet, acting out the plot. However, the 99th life she just finished was the most difficult challenge she had faced so far. Her father was obsessed with her mother and had completely ignored her since she was a child. If only her father had doted on her, perhaps their family wouldn't have met such a tragic end. But unfortunately, as the villainous supporting character, she had no chance of rebirth. The author only showed mercy to the protagonists. Just as she was thinking this, a strange light enveloped her. Why was her 100th life coming so soon? She hoped this time wouldn't be so miserable. As soon as she made her wish, she heard familiar scolding. She was surprised to find that this time, she hadn't transmigrated as a baby. Looking at the red-haired maid, ranting before her, she instinctively called out her name, Lisa. The result was a sharp slap across the face. "You brat, how dare you call me by my name?" The girl then realized that the maid before her was the same cruel head maid, Lisa, who had bullied her relentlessly in her past life. Why was she still entangled with Lisa in this life? It was absurd. And these familiar surroundings, along with her own familiar black hair. Could it be that the author had finally taken pity on her and granted her rebirth? In this timeline, it was when her mother had fled from her father and sought refuge at the Viscount's estate. The time when she and her mother had suffered inhumane treatment. Just as she was lost in thought, the despicable Viscount, alerted by the commotion, arrived intending to lock her away. But remembering that her father would soon come to rescue them, the girl bravely stood up and shouted at the Viscount, "Do you know who my father is? How dare you treat me like a slave?" But no one took her words seriously. The Viscount was even more brazen. After all, her father didn't even know of her existence. He then heartlessly threw the girl to Lisa, ordering her to lock the girl in the warehouse. Hearing the word warehouse, the girl's heart sank. According to the plot, she was supposed to stay with her mother, and the only time her mother was in the warehouse was when she died. Sure enough, after being thrown into the warehouse, she saw her mother's lifeless body. The girl burst into tears. Why did the cruel author have to make her relive this moment? Even in this life, she couldn't save her mother. The only woman who had shown her any warmth in all this chaos was gone forever. Suddenly, the girl heard a slight noise behind her. She immediately turned to look and discovered a blonde boy in the corner. Having died at the hands of the blonde male protagonist in her past life, she had always been wary of blonde hair. The male protagonist was about her age. Could this boy be him? But the male protagonist shouldn't be here right now. To confirm his identity, the girl abruptly swept aside his bangs. Seeing his dark eyes, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed he wasn't the male protagonist. The protagonist was supposed to have golden eyes. He apologized to the boy for his previous rudeness, but quickly realized something was amiss. According to the villainous daughter setting, he shouldn't be capable of such actions. But now, it seemed those restrictions were gone. To test his theory, he began to express concern for the boy's well-being. To his surprise, the words flowed effortlessly. The girl was thrilled, but she soon noticed something peculiar about the boy. Why did he remain curled up in the corner, silent and withdrawn? Just as she was about to approach him, the boy's stomach let out a loud growl. The girl realized he was hungry. She eagerly pulled out her croissant and offered it to him, but the boy kept refusing her kindness. This annoyed the girl. She was finally trying to be a good villainess, and this kid wasn't appreciating it. So the girl grabbed the boy and shoved the croissant into his mouth. "Oops, my hand slipped. It accidentally fell in your mouth," she said. After this little commotion, the boy finally started eating the croissant. The shared pastry seemed to bridge the gap between them. The girl learned the boy's name was Cien. After chatting for a while, they both fell asleep. When the girl woke up, Cien was gone. Could this kid have escaped without a trace? But she soon had no time to worry about Cien. The wall behind her suddenly exploded, and a man who looked remarkably like her rushed in and embraced her mother's body. Her obsessive father had finally arrived. Duke Bell, in his search for his wife, had turned the entire empire upside down, only to find her a cold corpse, leaving behind a little daughter who was the spitting image of him. But he didn't care about his daughter's well-being. He was consumed with the idea of resurrecting his wife, unaware that this very act would ultimately lead to the downfall of their entire family. As someone who had lived through this before, the girl knew this melodramatic plot all too well. So, facing her crazed father again, she felt a deep sense of melancholy. As expected, upon learning of her mother's death, he nearly choked her to death with magic without a second thought. Seriously, couldn't he at least take a good look at her face before going berserk? Anyone could see they were father and daughter. And how could a defenseless 5-year-old like her be a murderer? Thankfully, the captain of her father's night order was a reasonable man. He recognized her immediately. "Your Grace," he said, "don't you find this child's hair and eye color familiar?" And she also called the lady mother. The atmosphere became incredibly awkward. Her father finally stopped his rampage and ordered the captain to bring the girl along. They would conduct a paternity test later. They walked through a long corridor and arrived at the Viscount's cell. As soon as the Viscount saw her father, he began to plead for mercy. "Your Grace, this is a huge misunderstanding. When a lady sought shelter in our home, she didn't look like a noble at all. How could I have known she was the Duchess?" The girl rolled her eyes internally. This guy had clearly accepted the Black Panther brooch, a symbol of the Duke's family, and yet he dared to lie so blatantly. Fortunately, her father didn't indulge him. He grabbed the Viscount's hair. "I've spread the news of my search for the Duchess far and wide. Are you telling me you knew absolutely nothing?" Seeing the Viscount's continued defiance, the girl stepped forward and accused him. "He knew. He deliberately kept it a secret because he hates our family. Even when Mother was sick, he didn't care. He treated me like a slave. And in the end, he locked us in that dark warehouse." Seeing the girl's ragged clothes, her father was inclined to believe her. Then, he made a bizarre decision. He let his 5-year-old daughter decide the Viscount's punishment, as a way to prove she was truly his blood. At first, the Viscount thought he had escaped death. Little did he know, the girl was even more ruthless than the Duke. "Since you're so eager, let's start by breaking off your pinky finger. After all, you know her family is known for being demonic." "This is nothing," she said with chilling nonchalance. Hearing these savage words, the Viscount desperately clutched at the girl's clothes, begging for mercy. But the girl simply looked at him with icy eyes. "It's too late to beg for mercy now. I'll start with your fingers and toes, one by one. It wouldn't be fun if I started with your neck, now would it?" The captain, hearing such venomous words from a 5-year-old, trembled with fear. Truly the Duke's blood. So bloodthirsty at such a young age. The Duke seemed pleased with his daughter's performance. He suddenly remarked that her eyes did resemble his a little. Of course, in the end, they didn't do anything to the Viscount. The man actually fainted from sheer terror. Then, they discovered Cien unconscious in the warehouse. Seeing Cien being carried out, the girl's heart leaped in her throat. She quickly tugged on her father's coattails, pleading for him to spare Cien. Her father let out a chuckle, who said, "I was going to kill the boy." He then ordered his men to take Cien back to the Duke's mansion for treatment. After dealing with the matters at the Viscount's estate, the girl boarded the carriage home with her father. The Duke's mansion was already in a state of utter chaos. The servants were all abuzz, gossiping about the girl they had never met. Among them, the orange-haired maid, Lisa, had been appointed by the head maid as the girl's personal attendant. Soon, her father and his entourage arrived at the Duke's mansion. Seeing her father carrying her mother out of the carriage, and the girl trailing silently behind, Lisa's heart ached. She resolved to take good care of the girl. The girl, however, felt uncomfortable with Lisa's bright smile. In her memories, whenever Lisa smiled, trouble would soon follow. Over time, Lisa had become quiet and reserved. Now, she realized it was all her fault. She had tormented a perfectly good person into that state. After being cleaned and dressed, Lisa led the girl to dinner. Seeing the head chef looking eager to please, the girl felt a pang of guilt. In her past life, she had often discarded the chef's painstakingly prepared meals, complaining about the taste. But what felt even more burdensome were the maid's intense gazes. In her past life, due to her numerous misdeeds, the maids had avoided her like the plague. So, to be on the receiving end of so much affection was overwhelming. Lisa even expressed a desire to be with her forever. It was a sweet burden, but what she found most unbelievable was the image Lisa held of her father. It turned out that her father's heroic deeds in searching for his wife had become the basis of Lisa's fantasy of a deeply devoted husband. Lisa even wished for the girl to find a good man like her father. The girl could only chuckle dryly. She, the villainous, was unlikely to be so fortunate. Her father was the epitome of over the top. To threaten the Empress into helping him resurrect her mother, he had sent her a severed head every day. The poor Empress, driven to madness by his actions, had eventually been dealt with by him. With a father like that, their family's downfall was inevitable. It was just that she, his child, was completely innocent. She had done nothing wrong, yet she had to suffer the consequences alongside him. The thought of having to relive it all again filled the girl with despair. Lisa, seeing her despondency, clearly misunderstood. She launched into a lengthy explanation of their family's virtues. When Lisa first entered the workforce, she had been terrified of working as a maid. She'd heard countless stories of maids employed by noble families, meeting mysterious deaths. But upon arriving at the Valois Duke's mansion, she discovered the reality was quite different. Firstly, the work hours were 9 to 5, with the ability to leave on time. Secondly, not only were 3 meals a day provided, but they were also delicious. Then, there was a dedicated break room for the servants. Most importantly, they had generous vacation time. It was a worker's paradise. The girl felt a wave of shame wash over her as she listened to Lisa. Lisa seemed oblivious to the fact that her fortunate circumstances were solely due to her father, the master of the house, being constantly away. After she arrived here in her past life, she had worked Lisa like a horse. If it weren't for her finally breaking free from the character setting in this life, Lisa would probably be continuing her life of drudgery. But Lisa, seemingly unaware of any of this, asked if, after hearing all this, she felt a sense of pride in her family. So, the girl could only offer a perfunctory response. Wow, really? That's completely different from what I've heard outside. I heard that our family dismembers disobedient servants. Lisa bristled at this. My lady, you can't listen to those scoundrels gossip. The Valois family became one of the 4 great families solely through their exceptional swordsmanship, and they were also founding contributors to the empire. Most importantly, every direct heir has their own unique magic. They're incredibly powerful. So, my lady, you should be proud of your family. Seeing Lisa's unwavering loyalty, a wave of melancholy washed over the girl. What Lisa said wasn't wrong. If her father hadn't been so obsessed with resurrecting her mother, perhaps their family wouldn't have fallen so easily. But was changing her father really that simple? After all, his obsession with her mother had long since consumed him. And all of this had been noticed by Duke Bell, who had long held a grudge against her father. He was jealous. The Valois family's direct lineage possessed powerful magic, and he'd been itching to bring them down for a long time. So, when he learned that father hadn't held a funeral for mother, but instead preserved her body with magic, a wicked idea quickly formed in his mind. He decided to use mother to drag father into an abyss of no return. Meanwhile, father, keeping vigil beside mother, had spent another night drinking. The butler, long accustomed to this, simply handed him a glass of water and informed him that Duke Bell had arrived. However, the sight of mother on the bed still sent shivers down his spine. With all due respect, Your Grace, he began, how long do you intend to keep the Duchess here? Father, upon hearing this, immediately bristled. What's wrong with keeping my wife by my side? He retorted. But then, he remembered mother's love for sunlight and flowers, and decided to move her to the courtyard. After she was cleaned and dressed, father went to meet Duke Bell. Duke Bell, seeing father's still handsome face, was taken aback. Wasn't he supposed to be drowning in alcohol? How is his skin still so good? He wondered. Then, Duke Bell launched into a series of condolences. How have you been? I heard about the Duchess's unfortunate passing. How are the funeral preparations coming along? The dead cannot be brought back to life. You must grieve, but you must also move on. Father's face darkened considerably at these words. Didn't I already say I'm not holding a funeral? And are you here to mock me? If so, I wouldn't mind letting your wife see your corpse. Seeing father's magical attack about to strike, Duke Bell hastily pleaded for mercy. Please calm down, your grace. I'm here to help you save the Duchess. But I must ask you first, are you willing to do anything for her? Faced with this question, father answered without hesitation. Even if it means going to hell, he declared. Seeing him take the bait, Duke Bell immediately revealed his plan. He intended to trick father into seeking out a legendary dark magician and resurrecting mother by sacrificing living people. Of course, father wouldn't easily believe such nonsense now. But in the future, driven to desperation, would he take this desperate gamble for such a slim chance? The guide for the reborn in this world was a small, black, plump bird. It told the girl that only by showing love and reforming her father could she change her tragic fate. So, from then on, even knowing how terrible her father was, the girl would rush to him without hesitation. Not long ago, the detestable Duke Bell had tried to tempt father into seeking the dark magician. Although father hadn't agreed, he had become even more frantic in his search for a way to resurrect mother. As a result, he hadn't returned home for several days. Fortunately, the girl had the servants to keep her company. The maids enthusiastically performed puppet shows for her, but having lived so many lives, the girl was no longer interested in such things. However, seeing their eager faces, she still made an effort to appear engaged. After all, she still needed their help for her plan. After careful consideration, the girl realized that changing her father wouldn't be easy. So, she devised a backup plan to escape and live a life of freedom. But this required a substantial sum of money, which she would need to transfer discreetly. Therefore, she needed the maid's assistance. Just then, Lisa brought her the cream cake she had requested. The girl, however, instinctively blurted out, "I want a cherry pie instead." As soon as the words left her mouth, she realized her bad habits from her past life were resurfacing. Her capricious demands had nearly driven Lisa to the brink. If I were Lisa, she thought, I would have poisoned me by now. With this in mind, she quickly accepted the cream cake and thanked Lisa. She needed to be more careful in the future. However, the girl couldn't have imagined that in this life, Lisa and the other maids adored her even more than before. Seeing her melancholic mood today, they immediately began to reflect. Perhaps she didn't enjoy them constantly hovering around her. Therefore, they devised a plan to give her some alone time, hoping she would relax. However, this backfired spectacularly, leaving the girl feeling more isolated than ever. Seeing that none of the servants had approached her for days, the girl couldn't help but burst into tears. But then, remembering that no one would comfort a villainess, she slapped her cheeks, trying to hold back the tears. Suddenly, Lisa appeared out of nowhere, grasping her hand. "My lady, no matter how upset you are, you mustn't hurt yourself," she exclaimed. Immediately, a crowd of servants emerged, all expressing their concern. The girl was completely bewildered. It wasn't until Lisa announced, right in front of her, that the alone time plan was temporarily suspended, that she seemed to realize something. So, all this time, they had been doing it on purpose. But before he could dwell on it, the doctor arrived. He gently pinched the girl's cheeks and declared her to be fine. This infuriated Lisa, who insisted he examine the girl thoroughly again. Finally, after repeated assurances from the doctor, they were convinced she was unharmed. The girl, however, was astonished. Simply slapping her own cheeks had caused the entire household staff to drop everything and come check on her. This unexpected outpouring of concern brought a blush to her face, which the sharp-eyed Lisa immediately noticed. She promptly subjected the poor doctor to another round of examinations. To rescue him, the girl confessed what had truly happened. Upon hearing the explanation, everyone burst into tears. It turned out they were all filled with regret for not realizing her loneliness sooner. To make amends, Lisa immediately produced a white cat doll and gave it to her. Remembering how she had torn apart a similar doll in her past life, the girl was overcome with guilt. She vowed to cherish this one always. After everyone had left, the girl drifted off to sleep, cuddling the doll. In the middle of the night, she was awakened by a tapping at the window. Thinking it might be an assassin, she cautiously went to investigate. To her surprise, she found a small, black, plump bird who could talk. He immediately identified her as someone who had been reborn. The girl studied him carefully, suspecting he might be the legendary helper sent to those reborn. But before she could ponder this further, Lisa snatched the little bird. The girl hadn't realized Lisa was still awake and watching over her in the shadows. Seeing Lisa about to throw the bird away, the girl panicked. She quickly explained that the bird, like the cat doll, was her friend and that she had invited him to a secret meeting. Overcome with guilt, Lisa dramatically bumped her head against the wall. She had to protect the girl's childlike innocence, but she also desperately wanted to join the secret meeting. So, she declared that she too would wear an animal mask and participate. Only after receiving the girl's consent did she happily depart. Once Lisa was gone, the little bird began chattering incessantly. Exasperated, the girl offered him a piece of her treasured strawberry cake. At first, the bird seemed disdainful, but he soon dove in and devoured it. Finally appeased, the little bird showed the girl a letter written by God. It turned out this reborn life was a gift from the god, who wanted the girl to use this opportunity to live the life she desired. The first step was to change her father's current state. The girl was bewildered by this divine decree, but the little bird had already flapped his wings and departed, leaving the girl feeling lost. She hadn't even seen her father yet. How was she supposed to change him? To change her grieving father, the girl had to invoke the memory of her deceased mother, her father's lost love. Surprisingly, this tactic worked wonders. Not only did her father obediently join her for dinner, but he also cleaned his plate. Even the head chef shed tears of joy, remarking that the Duke hadn't eaten so much in a long time. Indeed, the memory of a lost love was a powerful remedy for grief. The next day, Lisa woke the girl early and dressed her in formal attire. It turned out the doctor had discreetly taken a blood sample during his examination to perform a paternity test. The results confirmed the girl was indeed a direct descendant of the Valois family. Her father was returning today to confirm the results himself. That's why Lisa had taken such care with her appearance. However, the girl knew it was all for naught. After all, in her past life, she had never shared a single meal with her father. There had been a few opportunities, but each time, she was informed he wouldn't be coming. But the servants firmly believed her father would come this time, especially the blue-haired man before her. He was Agatha, her father's aide, and the one who managed the Duke's finances. The girl seized the opportunity to ask Agatha when she would start receiving her allowance. Learning she would receive it next month, the girl beamed. The Valois family allowance was quite substantial. She could save enough to buy a house in just 3 months. Then, she could run away whenever she pleased. At this thought, a mischievous grin spread across her face. Agatha, seeing that grin, which was strikingly similar to the Duke's, couldn't help but marvel at the power of genetics. The girl felt a pang of embarrassment, but quickly realized something was amiss. Why did Agatha keep calling her kid? She felt slightly offended. Agatha explained that he would only use her name when she was older. This infuriated the girl, and she resolved to call Agatha Baby from now on. To the girl's utter astonishment, Agatha declared that kid and baby were the perfect pairing. This bizarre logic left her speechless. Clearly, anyone associated with her father was a little unusual. Just then, a servant hurried in and handed Agatha a letter. After reading it, Agatha dismissed the servant. The girl knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that her father wouldn't be coming. It seemed her fate was the same as in her past life. Changing her father was proving to be a monumental task. However, the girl had no idea that a turning point in this life would occur after her afternoon nap. Waking from her slumber, she habitually called out for Lisa. But Lisa, who was usually ever present, was nowhere to be found. An unsettling silence had fallen over the entire mansion. Not a single servant was in sight. After wandering for a while, she finally found Lisa, her face etched with worry. Upon seeing the girl, Lisa became incredibly flustered and immediately tried to coax her back to bed. But with the wisdom gleaned from multiple lifetimes, the girl knew something was amiss. Her suspicions were confirmed the next moment when she heard Agatha reporting to her father. Without hesitation, she ran towards the source of the voices. Servants scrambled around her in a panic, but her eyes were fixed on a single figure clad in black. Finally, she reached him and threw her arms around him. But as she slowly opened her eyes, she realized her clothes were covered in blood. Her father stared at her, his expression like a demon returned from hell. Terrified by his appearance, she stumbled back. Seeing her fear, he turned away, his voice a harsh whisper urging her to disappear. But the rawness in his voice gave her pause. The next moment, she saw his red-rimmed eyes. Had he been crying? In her past life, she had only known him as a madman obsessed with resurrecting her mother. She had never considered the depth of his grief after losing his only love, his loneliness. He had only wanted his beloved wife back, but in his desperation, he had made terrible mistakes, earning the world's condemnation. A wave of sympathy washed over her. In this life, she would change him. She called out to him just as he was about to leave. Mother always said we should eat our meals on time. She'd worry if he didn't eat properly. At the mention of her mother, a flicker of light returned to his eyes. He scooped her up and instructed the head chef to prepare a meal. And so, the girl unexpectedly shared her first meal with her father in both of her lives. She deliberately exaggerated her enjoyment of the food, telling him that mother liked people who ate well. His tactics seemed to work. However, he seemed to find the bread troublesome and hesitated to eat it. The girl resorted to her trump card. Father, do you know how many people worked hard to bring this bread to the table? They'll be very sad if you don't eat it, and you have to finish it all, or you'll be punished. Her father stared at her, momentarily stunned. He remembered a time when her mother had scolded him in the same way at the dinner table. Mother and daughter were so alike. He asked her how her mother used to scold him when he didn't finish his food. The girl pulled at her cheeks. Like this, she said. I felt like my cheeks were getting thinner from all the pulling. Upon hearing this, her father devoured the bread with lightning speed. Judging by the way you eat, your cheeks won't be getting thinner anytime soon. Now, eat slowly and finish everything. With that, he abruptly left, leaving the girl bewildered. Honestly, who ate that fast with someone else? After his wife's death, he had slept holding her body every night, consumed by grief and regret. Until this day, when his long-neglected daughter stood before him, firmly declaring to everyone that her father wasn't a monster. Her small figure inexplicably touched the deepest part of his heart. Not long ago, the girl had finally managed to have her first meal with her father, but he had just scarfed down his food and left. This left her feeling rather dejected. At this rate, when would she truly be able to connect with him? Putting her father aside for the moment, her relationships with the servants in this life were progressing surprisingly well. Lisa, in particular, had changed the most. She had even taken the initiative to arrange secret animal meetings for her. Although they were quite noisy with their constant chattering, the girl found herself enjoying the feeling of being surrounded by them. She had inadvertently finished all the sweets she had brought. Seeing this, Lisa and the others immediately offered to fetch her more. No sooner had they left than her father appeared. Seeing her alone, he immediately offered to take her to dinner. The girl was about to explain that Lisa and the others would be back soon, but her father simply stated that he would deal with the carelessly abandoned servants later. Alarmed, the girl vehemently defended Lisa and the others. Her father, however, merely sighed and said she was too kind, just like her mother. In the end, the girl was whisked away to dinner, her protests ignored. During dinner, a thought struck him. He recalled how his colleagues had, in an attempt to change their own lives, proactively befriended villains, and surprisingly, it had worked. After a fierce internal debate, the girl decided to take a gamble. Putting on her most adorable expression, she chirped, "Father, this steak is delicious, and the strawberry cake is even better. You should try some." With that, she scooped up a piece of strawberry cake and offered it to him, beaming. Her father, however, simply looked at her and said coldly, "So, what do you want me to do?" The girl deflated. Was this some kind of clueless dad response? In that moment, a hopeful little girl quietly shattered. Was it really that hard to just take a bite? She had gone to all that effort to recommend it. But no matter how enticingly she wiggled the cake-laden fork, her father remained unmoved. He clearly didn't understand the significance of sharing your favorite food. Did he think eating was just eating? Disappointed, the girl hung her head, and most of the cake tumbled off her fork and onto the floor. Seeing this, her father immediately ordered a servant to clean it up. At his words, the girl finally snapped. "Why don't you understand? I gave you my favorite food, but you rejected me so cruelly. Fine, we don't have to eat together anymore." Seeing her distressed expression, her father finally explained, "I wanted to eat with you because I care about you. It seems I have no choice but to eat the cake now." He then ate the remaining bit of cake from her fork. He then cautiously asked if she wanted more. The girl quickly assured him that was enough. She was overjoyed by the significant breakthrough in her relationship with her father, so much so that she couldn't sleep that night and snuck out for a snack. What she saw next, however, would be forever etched in her memory. Her father's room was in disarray, the doorway littered with shards of glass. Inside, he sat covered in blood, weeping. In that moment, the girl realized just how fragile her father was without her mother. The next day, her father woke with a high fever. Despite this, he was determined to leave the house. Neither Agatha nor the doctor could dissuade him. Agatha, thinking the girl might be able to stop him, hurriedly fetched her. After learning what was happening, despite knowing her actions might disrupt the plot, the girl agreed to go with Agatha. However, when they found her father, the girl didn't hide as Agatha expected. Instead, she wished him a safe journey. Agatha was puzzled. Suddenly, the girl stepped in front of her father. "Why are you stopping him from leaving? He's not a monster. He just misses mother terribly." She gently took his hand. "But father, you must promise me you'll eat and sleep well. You need to be healthy to find a way to bring mother back." Looking at her small face, so like his own, her father's heart melted. Although she looked like him, her words and actions were strikingly similar to his late wife's. It dawned on him then that he wasn't the only one who had lost his wife. His children had lost their mother too. He realized that he had changed since bringing the girl home. Even when encountering children of a similar age while out, he would refrain from violence and instead find good homes for them. Perhaps his daughter truly was his wife's greatest gift. Such a small person, yet she had unknowingly influenced his every word and action. After being scolded by a maid for being the worst father, he went into a period of intense self-reflection. He immediately immersed himself in child psychology books, determined to become a model father. Recently, persuaded by his daughter, he had finally stopped venturing out while ill. Instead, he had been uncharacteristically staying home, spending time with her for several days. The invisible barrier between them seemed to have crumbled that day, much to the relief of the mansion's staff. One day, the doctor came for the girl's routine checkup. He presented her with a specially formulated growth tonic, hoping she would grow quickly and become the baby who would dominate the empire. The girl, bewildered by his dramatic pronouncements, stared at him blankly. It wasn't until she happened to glance at the child psychology books on the shelf that she began to understand. Not wanting to disappoint the enthusiastic doctor, the girl played along, feigning delight, which sent him into raptures. As the two chatted excitedly, the Duke's aide suddenly rushed in, seeking the doctor. Upon seeing the girl, he promptly dropped to his knees. "Little miss, you're my hero. I'm eternally grateful to you for stopping the Duke that day. Honestly, at first, I resented you for not trying harder to keep him home. But after hearing your words, I realized we'd all been neglecting the Duke's feelings." Seeing his distress, the girl comforted him. "My dear, you're precious to father too. You've always been worried about him." Upon hearing this, the aide burst into tears. "Little miss, I feel I'm no longer worthy of being the Duke's aide." His outburst was cut short by the Duke's booming voice. "Enough. What are you doing in front of the child?" Scooping up the girl, he prepared to take her to lunch. Glancing at the still kneeling aide, he said, "You want to resign over something so trivial. Disappointing. Take a few days off." Before the aide could react, the Duke swiftly carried the girl away. Finally regaining his composure, the aide shouted after them, "Your Grace, I'm willing to serve you for life. You're the one who won't let me resign. Don't go back on your word." His voice echoed throughout the mansion, mortifying the Duke. Later, as father and daughter lunched together, the Duke suddenly announced he'd heard of an alchemist in the city who knew resurrection magic. He planned to visit, but promised to be back before dinner. It seemed his obsession with resurrecting his wife hadn't faded. Still, it was a good sign that he was now sharing his plans. The girl readily agreed. That evening, she waited by the window with a strawberry cake, hoping for the plump little bird's return. She'd lost count of how many days she'd been waiting. Perhaps there were too many reincarnated souls needing help, and he was simply overwhelmed. Just as she was about to give up, the bird's anxious voice chirped, "Don't throw it away. Isn't that for me?" He dove headfirst into the cake, splattering the girl with cream. Thankfully, he brought another letter from the deity, or the girl would have plucked every last feather from his black body. This time, the divine instruction was to prevent her father from leaving the house. Judging by the previous messages, the deity clearly wanted her to alter the original story's plot. But was that even possible? Lost in thought, the girl didn't even hear the bird's calls. Annoyed, the bird pecked her head, snapping her back to reality. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Looking earnestly at the bird, she asked, "Can you deliver a reply for me?" The bird explained that, according to the rules, he couldn't, nor could he reveal any information about the sender. Hearing this, the girl tore up the letter right in front of him, leaving the bird dumbfounded. "I've lived for centuries, and this is the first time I've seen such blatant defiance." The girl's expression darkened. "What kind of talk is that? Communication is a two-way street. If I can't reply, I have to express myself through actions. Even supporting characters have rights. I just want to know why I was reborn and the purpose of all this. Is that so wrong? I hope the sender will answer me soon." The bird was exasperated by her stubbornness. If the sender knew you were like this, they'd want to eat you alive. And haven't they written clearly enough? Why don't you understand? His words stung. "I've lived 100 miserable lifetimes as a villain's daughter," she cried. "Do you know how hard this bleak existence is?" The bird clearly didn't care. He simply flapped his wings and flew away. The girl hung her head, watching him go. "I just want to know how to escape this situation so father won't suffer anymore," she shouted after the departing bird. "You bad bird. Remember to pay for the cake next time. I'm never treating you again." As soon as the words left her mouth, she realized her father stood behind her. Lisa became the target of the Duke's sire. He believed Lisa was responsible for the girl's strange behavior, like talking to birds. Moreover, he accused Lisa of leaving his young daughter alone in the garden. Such an incompetent maid was utterly unacceptable. Stung by his words, Lisa began to trade barbs with the Duke. "I admit I haven't been perfect, but your grace," Lisa retorted, her voice sharp, "you're no better. Drunk every night and never home. Are you setting a good example as a father? If anything, you're the worst dad ever." Seeing the situation escalating, the girl started to intervene. But the Duke's aide quickly stopped her. Then they witnessed a shocking scene. The Duke, the formidable demon Duke, was completely shut down by Lisa's words. He, a man of renowned power, had been utterly defeated by a mere maid. Because of the girl's single wish, her father had seized the Viscount's estate without hesitation, making his 5-year-old daughter a multimillionaire. She had been swimming in a sea of money ever since. Not long ago, Lisa's words, "the worst dad ever," had struck a nerve, sending the Duke into a spiral of self-doubt. The girl couldn't bear to watch. She stomped over to them, her little legs carrying her with surprising speed. "Why are you saying such hurtful things to each other?" she demanded. "Don't you understand you're the people I love most? Lisa, you're doing a wonderful job. I often think being my maid is a waste of your talents." Lisa, however, burst into tears. "But miss, I want to take care of you forever." Seeing this wasn't helping, the girl turned to her father. "And father, you're wonderful too. You eat every meal with me." This, however, almost broke the Duke. "Is that all I can do for my daughter? If my wife knew, she'd be so disappointed." Just as the girl was struggling to comfort them both, a guard rushed in. "Your Grace, if you're not busy, please come to the dungeon immediately." The Duke grabbed the girl and rushed out, leaving the girl bewildered. She couldn't understand why he'd brought her to such a dreadful place. Was he still reeling from the earlier conversation? The Duke covered her eyes and asked the guard for a report. Apparently, the Viscount, after 4 months of confinement and torture in the dungeon, had finally snapped and brutally attacked Sion, finally attracting the guard's attention. The girl was disgusted by the Viscount's actions, especially upon learning Sion was the victim. She was furious. The Duke was equally enraged. He had ordered Sion to receive treatment, not to be imprisoned. An interrogation revealed the guard's negligence. He intended to punish them severely, but the girl knew Sion needed immediate attention. She urged her father to prioritize his treatment. With her words, "My father loves helping others," the Duke snapped out of his gloom. He immediately ordered Sion be taken for treatment. With Sion taken care of, it was time to deal with the Viscount. Remembering how the Viscount had treated his wife and daughter, the Duke agreed with the girl's earlier sentiment. He planned to torture him slowly, starting with his fingers. The similar ruthlessness of father and daughter was almost frightening, but the girl knew killing him would be too merciful. She stopped her father. The guards assumed she was objecting to the cruelty, but her next words stunned them. "What about his assets if he dies? He still owes me a lot of money. I cleaned their floors, scrubbed their toilets, ironed their clothes, and took out their trash. I did all that work, and he hasn't paid me a single penny." The Duke's face darkened. He immediately ordered his aide to transfer all of the Viscount's assets to the girl. A month later, the Viscount's lands began displaying the Black Panther banners of the Duke's family. This was a clear message to everyone. The Viscount was dead. Upon hearing the news, the Viscountess fled. She had warned her foolish husband not to underestimate the fallen Duchess, but he hadn't listened. Now, their family was ruined. If their illicit business dealings were exposed, the consequences would be even more dire. She had to escape before the Duke's family arrived. As she frantically prepared, a man in black appeared, demanding Sion's slave records. She readily handed them over, relieved to be rid of such a dangerous document. News of the Valois Duke seizing the Viscount's estate quickly spread to other noble families. Hearing that the Duke had given all the Viscount's wealth to his 5-year-old daughter, the heads of the families were stunned. But intimidated by the Duke's formidable power, they could only fume in silence. Their only hope of confirming the rumors was to wait for the Duke's appearance at the regular noble assembly. The problem was the madman, as they called him, hadn't attended a meeting in 5 years, ever since his wife had left. Now, consumed by his obsession with resurrecting her, it seemed unlikely he'd attend this year either. Duke Bell, growing increasingly irritated by the discussion, couldn't stand the attention lavished on such a precarious family. He abruptly volunteered to confirm the rumors himself, instantly becoming the savior of the entire assembly. Meanwhile, the man in black presented the stolen slave documents to a woman. After a brief glance, the woman declared it inconvenient to take possession of them for the time being, instructing the man in black to keep them safe. She then inquired about any new information. The man in black immediately reported that the Duke's recent unusual behavior seemed connected to the girl. He offered to handle the situation if necessary. The woman, however, instructed him to wait and see. She was curious about Sion's recovery. After receiving treatment, Sion had entered a long period of convalescence. Much to the girl's relief, she didn't want to lose her first friend so soon. Just then, Lisa arrived, lugging a large sack, and asked if the girl was ready. Seeing the sack, the girl's eyes lit up with excitement. "Go ahead," she urged. Lisa then proceeded to shower the girl with handfuls of money, and the girl, lost in the blissful sensation, swam in her ocean of coins. Everything seemed to be going well. Perhaps she would soon have enough money to leave. Or maybe she could prevent her father from meeting the Empress. Or perhaps, if she could somehow dissuade him from his obsession with the Empress's divine power, they could finally live happily as a family. Lost in thought, the girl was startled by Lisa and the Duke's aide calling her name. Lisa, blushing and fidgeting with her fingers, asked, "Miss, which do you like better, the white cat doll I gave you or money?" Although she knew Lisa would be hurt, the girl couldn't bring herself to lie. She awkwardly admitted she preferred the money. Overhearing this, the Duke's aide suddenly piped up, "And what about me and money, Mississippi? Which do you prefer?" Seeing his eagerness, the girl ruthlessly declared her preference for money once again. Then the Duke joined in. "And what about your father and money? Which do you love more?" Under the weight of familial obligation, the girl instantly chose her father. The Duke, however, tapped her little nose. "Wrong answer, silly. You should have said both." To prevent her father's descent into darkness, the girl needed to stop him from going to the islands and meeting the Empress. Unbeknownst to her, he had already left for the islands without a word. Her plan had failed before it even began. Still, there were 14 years until her family's demise. She had to find a solution within that time. Recently, her relationship with her father had significantly improved. This change had started to make her waver, even considering abandoning her escape plan. Perhaps she could change her father and create a happy life for them all. Torn between these two choices, she dreamt of a meeting with miniature versions of herself. The ponytailed version insisted on respecting the original story. After all, they were professional extras, and not interfering with the plot was basic professional courtesy. The pigtail version, however, argued that the ponytail version was being too rigid. This unexpected rebirth was clearly a divine opportunity. Besides, if they had truly made a mistake, they would have been punished within 5 months, not guided by the chubby bird's messages. Moreover, could she truly abandon everything and everyone here? Could she bear to witness the Valois family's destruction again? The girl immediately protested, and the ponytailed version conceded that the pigtailed version had a point. The three versions of herself agreed to stay and protect everyone. The catalyst for her father's complete descent into darkness was meeting the Empress, who possessed divine power on the islands. Therefore, the girl resolved to prevent him from going to the islands at all costs. Little did she know, while she was holding a meeting in her dreams, her father was already prepared to depart for the islands. Before leaving, he visited the girl. Seeing her tiny hand clutching his, refusing to let go, his heart melted. He almost took her with him. Had his guard not repeatedly emphasized the harsh conditions of the islands, he might have actually done it. Had his guard not repeatedly emphasized the harsh conditions of the islands, he might have actually committed such a reckless act. Finally, he reluctantly prepared to depart for the islands. Before leaving, he instructed his aide to take good care of the girl during his absence. He expected to return in 3 weeks. Then, without looking back, he left. The next day, the girl, finally with a clear goal in mind, woke up full of energy. Upon seeing Lisa, she threw herself into her arms. "Lisa, even though you could be a bit nagging sometimes, you're still an important part of my family. I'll protect you from now on." Lisa, upon hearing the girl consider her family, was moved to tears. She immediately gave the girl a huge hug, nearly squeezing the life out of her. Then, on their way to breakfast, every servant in the mansion greeted the girl warmly, making her feel even more wonderful. This life, like that of main character, was just too perfect. She even picked some beautiful flowers from the garden, arranging them in a vase to give to her father. However, when she arrived at the dining room, she found the Duke's aide looking haggard. Faced with the girl's concern, the aide explained he simply hadn't slept well. Upon hearing this, the girl immediately comforted him, assuring him everything would be all right. Being consoled by a 5-year-old was a first for the aide, and he was deeply touched. But soon, he was worried again. How would he explain the Duke's departure to her? Sure enough, the next moment, as she prepared to eat breakfast, the girl asked about her father. Upon learning he had not only gone to the islands, but wouldn't be back for 3 weeks, the girl nearly crumbled. Just yesterday, she had promised her imaginary friends she would stop him from going. And now, her plan had failed before it even began. This was undoubtedly a huge blow. She promptly fainted. Lisa and the others were terrified and immediately called for a doctor. Just as she was fuming about her father, the inconsiderate jerk who left without saying goodbye, the doctor declared she was fine and just needed a few days of rest. Infuriated, she angrily accused the doctor of being a quack. "Doctor," she cried, "you don't understand me at all. This is a psychological ailment. You're such a disappointment." The doctor, upon hearing this, began to question his entire career. From that day on, the girl refused to speak to anyone for several days. No amount of coaxing from the maids could persuade her. However, perhaps time truly is the best medicine for heartache. By the 4th day, the girl had calmed down completely and even started indulging in strawberry cake. After all, she reasoned, they weren't in a truly dire situation yet. They still had a full 14 years before their family's demise. She refused to believe she couldn't find a solution in 14 years. Just then, she overheard the maids chatting outside her door. They were overjoyed that she was finally eating again. They had even been creepily monitoring her every move. Suddenly, one maid cautiously asked Lisa if they should inform the girl about Sion. Though spoken softly, the girl caught it instantly. The girl immediately threw open the door, demanding to know how Sion was doing and asking Lisa to take her to see him at once. Sion, unconscious for a long time, finally awoke. He was astonished to discover that the little girl who had once shared his misfortune was now the cherished daughter of the Demon Duke, and she was surprisingly kind to him. Not long ago, the girl had learned of Sion's situation from the maids, and immediately demanded Lisa take her to see him. However, judging by the maid's earlier conversation, Sion's condition seemed poor. This made her worry. When she arrived at Sion's room, the maids, as if seeing a savior, immediately asked her to try and persuade him. Only after seeing the situation for herself did the girl understand what was happening. Sion, now awake, refused to eat anything, no matter how the maids tried to coax him. And if he didn't eat, he wouldn't recover quickly. This was giving the maids a terrible headache. Suddenly, a maid noticed the girl peeking in the doorway and immediately curtsied. Upon hearing the girl's name, A flicker of light appeared in Sion's eyes. Is it really you? Seeing Sion like this, the girl smiled wryly. Yes, it's me. And since I'm here, you have to eat properly. And besides, someone who's sick shouldn't be standing all the time. Sit down. But Sion refused, looking at her seriously. I know you're a slave, just like me. You must have been brought here by that madman, too. As he spoke, a sudden pain shot through Sion's wounds, nearly making him lose his balance. But he still gripped the girl's shoulders tightly, urging her to flee. Get out of here, quickly. The master of this house is a notorious demon. Although she knew her father had a bad reputation, hearing it directly from Sion felt like a personal affront. However, the girl didn't intend to hide anything from him. She promptly dismissed the maids. Seeing the maid's deference towards her, Sion seemed to realize something. So you're the Duke of Valois' daughter. Why, you of all people? Seeing Sion's crestfallen expression, the girl was puzzled. Yes, I am his daughter. I specifically asked my father to treat you, and there's no need for formalities between us. Let's just be comfortable. Despite the girl's persuasion, Sion insisted on using formal language, irritating her to the point she wanted to argue. But Sion unhesitatingly avoided her outstretched hand. Could it be that he disliked her because she was the Duke's daughter? Just like in her past life, those wealthy young ladies who pretended to befriend her. They never truly wanted to be her friend. They merely tolerated her due to her status. Was her first friend in this life the same? With this thought, she stopped pressing Sion and asked Lisa to bring in some food. She insisted Sion eat before receiving treatment, but Sion felt he couldn't afford such a lavish meal. The girl assured him there would be no charge and that he could leave after the treatment. For now, she simply wanted him to recover. Seeing her earnest expression, Sion finally agreed to eat. However, he refused the expensive steak, requesting only wheat bread. The girl, exasperated by his pickiness, reluctantly declared that if he didn't eat the steak, she would have to throw away the 3 gold coin cut of meat, as no one would eat a slave's leftovers. Hearing the steak's value, Sion wavered, but he still had one embarrassing problem. He didn't know how to eat steak. Surprised, the girl immediately forked a piece of beef and told him to open his mouth. Initially reluctant, Sion succumbed to her enthusiasm and allowed himself to be fed. Pleased with her success, the girl held out her pinky finger, ready to make a pact. Promise me, when it's just the two of us, no more formal talk, okay? To change her family's tragic fate, the 5-year-old girl decided to sneak into the office at midnight and tear up an important document. However, she was betrayed by her trusted maid, Lisa, and caught red-handed by the Duke's aide. Recently, thanks to the girl's comforting, Sion had finally started eating properly. However, he seemed to have developed a particular fondness for chocolate croissants, asking the maids for them at every meal. Hearing this from Lisa, the girl was mortified. She hadn't expected her first act of kindness since her rebirth, giving Sion a croissant, to have such a lasting impact. Could he be addicted? Why did he need them at every meal? She should have given him something else. But he looked so frail, like he would faint without food. She had given him the croissant out of desperation. Seeing the girl's distress, Lisa suggested visiting Sion. Considering his sensitivity, the girl decided against it. He probably needed some time alone to process everything. But his reaction yesterday was strange. Most people would avoid eye contact with a noble, but Sion, upon learning her identity, had been visibly startled. He had asked dejectedly, "Why you?" He didn't seem afraid of nobles. Why? Or was she overthinking it? Perhaps Sion simply had a trauma related to nobles. Lost in thought, a sudden clap of thunder startled her, followed by torrential rain. Lisa pulled her into a hug. "Oh dear, our little lady must be frightened. Don't worry, I'm here." The girl felt utterly exasperated by Lisa's over-the-top affection, but the rain reminded her of her past life. The next moment, she saw the Duke's aide through the crack in the door. The downfall of her family in her past life had started with him. She hadn't been able to stop her father from leaving, but she would stop the impending disaster. She and Lisa agreed. At 2 a.m., Lisa would distract the aide, and she would sneak into the office and deal with the documents. However, her small body nearly made her oversleep. Thankfully, he understood the gravity of the situation and finally roused himself. Just then, the paper mouse Lisa had left began to move. This was the signal they had agreed upon. The moving mouse meant it was time to act. The girl immediately slipped out to the office door. Seeing it unguarded, she mentally applauded Lisa's efficiency. If the plan went smoothly, she would have to reward Lisa handsomely. She entered the office without a hitch. However, An accident occurred while she was retrieving the documents from a drawer. They were too heavy, and she lost her grip, scattering them across the floor. Despite the mess, she had to find the document quickly. After a frantic search, she finally located the proposal to cut off the Doro Kingdom's funding. 2 years ago, the Doro Kingdom had waged war against the Empire for territory. House Valois had represented the Empire in the conflict. Her father had won. Unsurprisingly, the Doro Kingdom became a vassal state and sent their mixed-race prince, Peter, as a hostage. But not long after, the Doro Kingdom suddenly ceased all communication. House Valois believed they should cut off their funding. This decision earned them Peter's resentment. Much later, when Peter became emperor, he targeted House Valois, leading to their downfall. Remembering this, the girl immediately moved to tear the cursed proposal. The next second, the Duke's aide appeared behind her. She nearly jumped out her skin. Quickly recovering, she yelled for the guards. However, Lisa rushed in. Had Lisa betrayed her, causing the aide's sudden appearance? But Lisa was supposed to be on her side. The aide explained that they were both on the girl's side. But as adults, they had a duty to guide and educate her. Infuriated by this condescending nonsense, the girl bit him hard. Then, desperate for an explanation, she turned to Lisa. Lisa echoed the aide's sentiments. The girl's heart sank. Even you, Lisa, are you abandoning me too? A pang of guilt struck Lisa. She mumbled an apology and fled. Could their relationship ever be repaired? The girl, attempting to save her family, had raided the office to destroy the crucial proposal, only to be caught red-handed by the aide. However, he didn't scold her harshly. Instead, he calmly explained the implications of her actions. Not long ago, she had almost succeeded in tearing the document, only for Lisa to foil her plans with her betrayal. Fury simmered within her, but her 5-year-old body was no match for the aide. Defeated, she surrendered. Seeing her dejected expression, the aide softened. "Little miss, why are you crying?" The girl, I remember, wasn't so easily upset. "Is there a particular reason why you wanted to destroy that proposal?" The girl clutched her skirt. She desperately wanted to tell him that the mixed-race prince from the Doro Kingdom, currently held hostage, would one day become emperor. But she couldn't reveal the future. It would disrupt the timeline. The aide, misinterpreting her hesitation, assumed she simply wanted to play with paper. He pulled a fresh sheet from his drawer. Guilt gnawed at the girl. She had lived 9 lives, yet she was still acting like a child. Sensing her sudden shift in mood, the aide offered her the proposal again. "Don't be sad. If you don't want to play with paper, is there something specific you dislike about this one?" The sight of the proposal reignited her anger. She pointed to a specific passage. The aide's eyes widened in surprise. The girl was objecting to their family's decision to cut off the Doro Kingdom's aid. Seeing his disbelief, the girl sighed inwardly. He probably thought she was being childish, but his next words gave her a flicker of hope. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She immediately asked if it would change anything. The aide explained that the regular meeting would still proceed, but he would inform everyone that the direct descendant of Valois opposed the decision. She would also attend the meeting. However, the other heads of families would likely question her authority. How would she handle that? Shame washed over her. If she couldn't give the family heads a reasonable explanation, she would be seen as a troublemaker. She would be labeled a wicked girl again and face certain doom. It seemed her actions had been too rash. The Duke's aide, seeing that she finally understood the implications, immediately comforted her. "Everyone makes mistakes while growing up. As long as you learn from them, you're still a good child." He was curious, though, how she knew about the proposal. The girl froze, sensing danger. She tried to feign ignorance. But the aide continued, "You and Lisa devised such an elaborate plan, as if you knew about this proposal long ago. Could you be a prophet?" The girl's mind short-circuited at his outlandish theory. The next second, she decided to play along, instantly earning the aide's awestruck admiration. Seeing how easily he was fooled, the girl couldn't help but worry about her family's future. After last night's heart-to-heart with the aide, the girl deeply regretted her actions. She apologized to the guards and maids on duty last night. Soon, however, she noticed the crowd of onlookers growing. After observing for a moment, she realized Lisa was enthusiastically inviting the servants to watch her apologize. Furious, she snapped at Lisa to be quiet. Just then, she spotted Sion watching from a distance. Had he seen her apologizing to the servants, and finally lowered his guard. Thinking this, she immediately asked the aide to let her continue apologizing. However, the aide declared he'd had enough entertainment, and, with no audience left, it was rather boring. So, he decided to leave. The girl flew into a rage at his nonchalance. Unfortunately, her outburst scared Sion away again. Now, there was no way to explain herself. She had finally found a chance to get closer to Sion, only for the aide to ruin it. He'd also made her look foolish in front of Sion. Just a while ago, she had lost her temper after being teased by the aide. Sion had witnessed the scene and fled in fright. Desperate to explain, the girl chased after him, but Sion was surprisingly fast. So, the girl kicked off her little shoes and ran after him with all her might. Sion, wait. It was all a misunderstanding. Please, let's talk. The servants were bewildered by the chase. The knights even tried to help her catch Sion, but she quickly stopped them, urging them not to interfere. Finally, she was almost upon him. Remembering how Sion disliked being touched, she stopped short, deciding to approach him gently. Sion, she called out, can I hold your hand? If you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes. With that, she grabbed Sion's hand. Gotcha. Now let's talk. Before Sion could reply, the girl tripped over her sock. Strangely, the expected pain didn't come. Instead, she landed in a warm embrace. Seeing Sion sprawled on the ground, groaning in pain, the girl scrambled to her feet. Sion suddenly asked, if I had told you not to touch me, would you really have refrained? Relieved, the girl smiled. Of course. I just wanted to clear up the misunderstanding. Seeing her smile, Sion's expression darkened. Then I was wrong. I should have explicitly refused. So, don't make that strange expression again. It doesn't suit a Valois. The girl's spirits plummeted. Sion clearly hated her family. But why? Her father hadn't done anything to him. It didn't make sense. Just as she was about to ask Sion, the aide scooped her up. There you are, little miss. Ugh, him again. He'd ruined everything. It was so embarrassing to be seen like this by Sion, especially with the way he was staring at her. The girl felt even more ashamed. Just then, Lisa and the others arrived. Upon hearing the girl had tripped over her sock, Lisa immediately began fussing with it. A nearby servant reminded her that the girl was more important than the sock, finally making Lisa stop. The aide then prepared to carry the girl to the infirmary. Before leaving, the girl turned to Sion. You'll be taken for treatment soon too, and I'm not usually like this. I'll come find you in a while. You must wait for me. Do you understand? After seeing the doctor and returning to her room, the girl couldn't help but pummel her pillow. It was all the fault of that hateful aide interrupting her. She just wanted to become friends with Sion. Why was it so difficult? But judging by Sion's behavior today, could it be that he hated her because she was a Valois? If that was the reason, things would be tricky. Lost in thought, the girl suddenly found herself wide awake. She turned to Lisa and began eating a late-night snack. Only after indulging in a delicious strawberry cake did she feel alive again. However, she hadn't forgotten to ask Lisa for help. Lisa, is making friends really this tiring? Lisa pondered her words. If you want friends, my lady, you could join the social circles. Then, many people would eagerly try to be your friend. But having lived through this life once before, the girl knew those were nothing but superficial friendships. However, something else bothered her. Can a noble and a slave ever truly be friends? Lisa found herself at a loss. As far as I know, my lady, that only happens in romantic novels. These words struck a chord with the girl. After all, wasn't this world, to her, precisely a novel? Suddenly, as if struck by inspiration, she rushed to the bookshelf and grabbed a red book. Then, excitedly, she begged Lisa to lend it to her. Lisa's eyes widened in horror at the sight of the cover. But in the end, she couldn't refuse the girl and agreed. Determined to get closer to Sion, the girl invited him to lunch, who knew it would almost backfire. Not long ago, the girl, wanting to redeem herself in Sion's eyes, had sought Lisa's help. During their conversation, she noticed a book on Lisa's shelf and immediately begged to borrow it. Lisa, horrified by the title, quickly pulled out a children's book and offered it to the girl. My lady, I think this one will be much more enjoyable. It's the story of overcoming social differences, Princess Lion and Baron Rabbit. I believe this book will be more helpful to you. So, the next day, the girl, book in hand, pestered the aide to read it to her. Unexpectedly, she became completely captivated by the story, especially the part where Princess Lion, for the love of Baron Rabbit, was willing to become a vegetarian. Coupled with the aid's dramatic reading, she suddenly had an epiphany. The protagonists were just like her and Sion. If she could be like Princess Lion, humbling herself to blend into Sion's life, wouldn't she also quickly become close to him? With this thought, she immediately stood up and bid the aide farewell. "Goodbye, dearie. I'm off to eat hay. After all, I'm a lion." Before the aide could react, the girl had already darted off, leaving him standing there, bewildered. He wanted to tell her that lions get indigestion from eating grass, but the girl was in no mood to listen to his lecture. She was already rushing towards Sion's room, bumping straight into Sion's maid. Hearing that the girl was looking for Sion, the maid immediately offered to call him out. The girl declined her help and peeked through the crack in the door to observe Sion. He was quietly staring out the window. The sunlight illuminated his youthful face, revealing increasingly delicate features. She felt that with Sion's looks, he shouldn't be a mere slave. Lost in thought, the girl was startled when Sion noticed her. "What are you doing here? How have you been these past few days?" That day, when the servants dragged you away so roughly, they even pulled off your sock. He shouldn't have mentioned it. The girl's heart ached at the reminder. "I'm Fina. After all, I was in the wrong that day." Hearing this, Sion asked her again why she had apologized. But after a moment, he realized they weren't that close and awkwardly turned away. The girl couldn't stand his hesitant manner. "Actually, I apologized to everyone because I wanted to destroy the family's confidential documents. And the next day, I caused such a commotion with you, a slave. Perhaps I'm just a reckless person by nature." Hearing the girl speak so brazenly about her mischievous deeds, Sion was stunned. He had never met someone so thick-skinned, but the girl didn't seem to care. Instead, she enthusiastically invited him to lunch. Sion stared blankly at the girl's bright smile. "Are you sure it's okay to keep interacting with me? Won't the Duke scold you? You'll become a bad child." Hearing this, the girl grabbed him tightly. "Listen carefully. Sion being scolded and me becoming a bad child are two different things. Even if I keep doing this, I won't necessarily become a bad child. So don't worry about that. Have lunch with me." After hearing the girl's words, Sion's face flushed crimson. It was the first time anyone had said such things to him. The girl truly was a strange person. At lunch, to enact her plan, the girl specifically chose the same whole wheat bread as Sion. The result, predictably, was that it tasted awful. Fortunately, Sion had already finished eating. He immediately ordered the servants to bring dessert. Just as Lisa assumed he would ask for his favorite strawberry cake, the girl, uncharacteristically, requested the royal family's signature dessert. Lisa was shocked and hurriedly asked the girl if she needed to prepare a portion for Sion as well. After all, letting a slave eat such a high-class dessert was simply outrageous. But the girl wouldn't allow Lisa to interrupt her plan. Finally, unable to dissuade the girl, Lisa had no choice but to prepare 2 servings. "Sion, it's not that I wanted to eat this. I'm doing this to better understand Mr. Rabbit. So let's enjoy it together." Before Sion could figure out who Mr. Rabbit was, he noticed a corner on the girl's dessert. He immediately tried to stand and stop her. But the moment he moved, he was surrounded by knights, their swords pointed directly at him. The Duke's aide, while shielding the girl, glared at Sion and said menacingly, "It seems your master hasn't given you permission to stand." The girl's words, promising to protect him, deeply touched Sion, who had never experienced such care. It even sparked a desire to stay with her forever. Just moments ago, as the girl was about to mistakenly eat the chocolate, Sion, desperate to save her, had stood up abruptly, only to be mistaken for a rebel by the knights. The reason Sion had stopped the girl from eating the chocolate was because of a well-intentioned lie she had told earlier. During their first meeting, to ensure Sion would accept the chocolate croissant without burden, the girl had claimed to be allergic to chocolate. She hadn't expected her offhand remark to be taken so seriously by Sion, leading to him being threatened by the knights. Guilt washed over her. "That's right. Thanks to Sion, I almost lost my life. Everyone, put down your weapons." Besides, before being a slave, Sion is a child, someone who deserves to be protected. Although the knights were skeptical about the girl's chocolate allergy, they sheathed their swords. Then they roughly threw Sion out, fiercely warning him not to act so rashly again. Sion himself didn't understand why he had reacted that way. Subconsciously, he seemed unwilling to let the girl get hurt. Suddenly, the purple necklace Sion wore vibrated intensely. It was the woman who had bought him for 5,000 gold coins. Although he didn't want to talk to her, he couldn't arouse her suspicion. He silently answered the call. When the woman asked how he was doing at the Valois estate, he replied that nothing special had happened and that he needed to continue observing, remembering the girl's words. He couldn't help but ask the woman if it was true that children deserve to be protected. The woman coldly asked him if he wanted to be treated that way himself. Sion quickly apologized. The woman told him not to panic and asked where he had heard that phrase. Learning it was from a maid in the Valois household, the woman was puzzled. Rumors said the maid was living in a separate residence, not the Duke's mansion. Moreover, she could sense Sion's fondness for the girl. The woman decided to take the girl along with Sion during the upcoming periodic meeting. Sion's heart fluttered with joy. He thought he would be very happy if he could stay with the girl. But he didn't know the girl had already become suspicious of his identity. How could a slave know the ingredients of such an expensive dessert? And his inherent nobility clashed with his status as a slave. What was his true identity? With this in mind, the girl decided to ask the Duke's aide to investigate. Upon entering his office, she was startled to find him slumped lifelessly over his desk. She was about to cry out, but the aide stopped her just in time. With the Duke away, he had been handling extra work, making him even more exhausted than usual. Seeing the dark circles under his eyes, the girl couldn't bear to bother him further. She told him to rest and turned to leave, but the aide called out to her. "My dear prophetic child, regarding the periodic meeting, I'd like to have a proper chat with you. First, I must ascertain whether you truly possess the ability to foresee the future. Only then can you participate in the periodic meeting." The girl's heart pounded in her chest. It seemed the Duke's aide had finally received her father's permission, which means, she thought, his decision now directly impacts our family's future. Very well then, bring it on. And so, the aide posed his first question. "Tell me, who will be my future wife?" A cold sweat broke out on the girl's forehead. She strongly suspected he was abusing his position for personal gain. Honestly, she thought, it's not like I'm a fortune teller. How am I supposed to know who his wife will be? In that case, she decided it was time to teach him a lesson. With that in mind, the girl put on a dramatic performance. She began, feigning deep concentration. I see our dear aide's future wife. But wait, that's odd. It's a man. It seems our dear aide will have a wise and valiant husband. How delightful. The aide's face paled. He felt as if he'd been struck by lightning, wishing he could simply disappear. Serves him right, the girl thought, for asking such a ridiculous question. Just as she was about to leave, the aide clung to her ankle. "Forgive me, my lady," he pleaded. "I was merely jesting. Now for the real question. When will your two brothers return?" The girl froze. This was clearly a question that benefited the aide. After all, he was intimately familiar with the schedules of everyone in the Valois family. But no matter how well-informed he was, how could he possibly compare to her, a person reborn with future knowledge? Without hesitation, she told him, "My brothers were originally scheduled to return in a year. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, they will be back in a month, and we should receive news from the academy in about a week." Seeing the conviction in her words, the aide felt a flicker of unease. Taking advantage of his uncertainty, the girl offered another prediction. "In a week, Lisa will leave the house carrying 2 swords." The aide looked skeptical, but the girl remained confident. She believed that once the aide witnessed the fulfillment of her prophecies, he would wholeheartedly follow her lead. Sion burst into tears the moment he saw the girl lying on the grass. He blamed himself, convinced that he was the reason for her current state. Little did he know, the girl simply wanted to take a nap. It was almost a huge misunderstanding. A short while ago, the girl had confided in the Duke's aide about future events, admitting that her foresight was limited to events occurring before her 19th birthday. This only fueled the aide's curiosity about the future she knew. But the girl refused to divulge the details. After all, that terrifying future was a nightmare she wished to avoid. The aide's heart sank as he observed the grim expression on her face. Recalling her frantic attempt to destroy the document earlier, realization dawned on him. Could it be, he wondered, that a grave crisis awaits the Valois family? And is her inability to see beyond her 19th birthday the reason? She's so desperate to change the future. Seeing that the aide finally understood her intentions, the girl invited him to join her in the fight to protect their family. As the first step in their family protection plan, the girl devoured 3 strawberry cakes. As she reached for a fourth, Lisa finally snapped. "Why are you letting my lady behave so recklessly?" she demanded of the aide. "If she continues like this, she'll ruin her health." To Lisa's astonishment, the aide simply replied, "My lady has her reasons." The girl chimed in, "Besides, a few extra strawberry cakes won't kill me." Lisa, thoroughly exasperated by their apparent collusion, stormed off without another word. The girl sighed as she watched Lisa go. The aide's obedience stemmed from the fulfillment of her earlier prophecies, though the one about Lisa had been fabricated. However, the aide remained unsuspecting, but he wasn't always so easily fooled. After Lisa's departure, he turned to the girl with a serious expression. "Are you certain," he asked, "that consuming copious amounts of strawberry cake is truly for the benefit of the family?" The girl, prepared for this question, replied, "Of course, dear aide. I am a princess of the Valois family. My happiness is the family's happiness." The aide pondered her words for a moment before snatching the 4th strawberry cake from her hand. "Well then," he said, "since you've consumed so many cakes for the sake of the Valois family's happiness, you should also brush your teeth for the sake of their health." The girl lunged for the cake. I know. I'll brush after this one." But the aide held it out of her reach. "My lady, I believe in your prophetic abilities, but that doesn't mean I'll willingly be a pushover," the aide continued. "Furthermore, the Duke recently sent a message instructing me to prioritize your safety and well-being. Therefore, I must insist on your cooperation." And so, the girl found herself being dragged off to brush her teeth by the insistent aide. The moment she finished brushing, she ran to the courtyard to vent her frustrations. That aide was truly infuriating. He had cruelly separated her from her beloved pastries. She and Lisa were practically 2 peas in a pod. By now, she didn't want to dwell on their squabbles. The weather was beautiful, so she decided to take a nap on the lawn. Just as she was drifting off, Sion spotted her lying on the ground. He rushed to her side. "My lady, why are you lying here? Are you unwell?" To avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings, the girl initially chose not to respond. However, this only fueled Sion's anxieties. Could it be my fault? He wondered. Is it because I, a mere slave, ate with you and you were scolded for it? I'm so sorry, it's all my fault. Overwhelmed with guilt, Sion began to sob softly. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, the girl quickly sat up. "No, Sion, it's not like that. Please don't cry. Before she could finish, Sion embraced her tightly. "I'm so sorry, my lady. You were scolded because of me, weren't you? Are you hurt?" This was the first time the girl had seen Sion so emotionally distraught. It was clear he wasn't in a state to listen to any explanations. So, the girl simply comforted him until he calmed down. Only then were they finally able to communicate properly. "Sion, are you alright now? But why were you crying earlier?" "I thought something had happened to you," he replied. "I just wanted to take a nap," she explained. "Why on the lawn?" "No reason, just felt like it." Sion couldn't contain himself at her casual response. Even if you wanted to sleep like that, it's too dangerous outside. Hearing Sion's nagging, the girl grew irritated. She'd already been lectured enough today. She was a lady of the Valois family. Shouldn't she be able to live as she pleased? Why did everyone insist on controlling her? Frustrated, she snapped at Sion. "I'm in my own home. I could do whatever I want. What's it to you?" Seeing the hurt in Sion's expression, the girl realized she had unconsciously revealed her spoiled nature again. Just as she was about to explain herself, Sion turned to leave. "Just go back to your room and sleep. Don't worry me anymore." The girl knew she couldn't let him go so easily. She grabbed his arm. "I'm sorry, Sion. I didn't mean it like that. I really know I was wrong. Can you please not be mad at me?" To her surprise, Sion readily agreed. "I can forgive you, but can you promise not to do it again?" Overjoyed, the girl held out her pinky finger. "Of course. I promise I won't worry you again, Sion." After making their pinky promise, they finally reconciled. To ease Sion's guilt, the girl offered him a job at the Duke's mansion as a way to repay him for saving her life. However, to their dismay, the aide flatly refused their request when they excitedly sought his approval. Shortly after reconciling with Sion, the girl had asked him why he had come to the garden. It turned out he had come looking for her specifically, feeling indebted to her. She had not only saved his life, but also provided him with food and shelter. He felt compelled to find a way to repay her kindness, but he hadn't found an opportunity. Upon hearing this, the girl immediately invited him to work for their family. That way, he could earn money and spend time with her every day. She was slightly concerned about whether the aide would agree, but she didn't necessarily want to force Sion to accept the offer. Sion suddenly looked conflicted. Can I trust the Valois family? He asked. The girl understood that Sion wasn't an ordinary slave and seemed to harbor a deep resentment towards the Valois family. But she wanted him to trust her. She had always been proud of her family. They had not only led the knights to victory in war, but also commanded the loyalty of countless vassals. Most importantly, they had her father, the best in the world, leading them all. So, Sion had no reason to worry. And no matter what choice he made, they would always be friends. Suddenly, Sion asked if he could earn 5,000 gold coins working there. The girl smiled and assured him that he could. In truth, from this moment on, Sion had already decided to buy his freedom and stay with the girl forever. Of course, things didn't go as smoothly as planned. The aide vehemently opposed the idea. Seeing his unyielding stance, the girl decided to play her trump card. She widened her eyes, putting on her most endearing expression. But we brought Sion home, so we have to be responsible for him. She pleaded with the aide. So please, darling, please agree. The aide, utterly worn down by her persistence, finally relented. I'll bring it up with your father. Hearing this, the girl assumed it was a done deal and immediately began celebrating with Sion. Their joy was short-lived. The aide threw a bucket of cold water over their excitement. I never said it was approved, and first, send him away. We need to talk. Reluctantly, the girl told Sion to return to his room and wait. No sooner had Sion left than the aide turned to her, his face grim. Young miss, are you joking? Is this also a prophecy? He asked, his voice laced with suspicion. The girl, seeing his expression, rushed to explain. Sion isn't part of my prophecies. This is just a destined encounter. The aide was speechless. Never mind destined encounters. We need to discuss the regular meetings. First, the heads of the families won't easily believe a prophet. We need to think of something else. The defeated nation suddenly losing contact already implies rebellion. In this situation, I really don't know how to secure their aid funds. But you said that if we withdraw the funds, the Valois family will be annihilated. The girl nodded in agreement. That's exactly right. What we need to do is not provoke the mixed blood Prince Peter. Just as she was about to share her other thoughts, Lisa rushed in. It's bad, Mr. Aide. There's an emergency. Upon hearing the news, the aide was forced to interrupt their conversation. He had to greet Duke Bell. The name sent a shiver down the girl's spine. Duke Bell was originally a branch of their Valois family. He later rose to become one of the 4 great families through nefarious means. Duke Bell had always been intensely jealous of their family's power. He was obsessed with imitating everything they did, but lacked the ability to replace them. Suddenly, a knock echoed at the door. Thinking it was the aide returning, the girl rushed to open it. Instead, she was met by a small, blue-haired girl clutching a rabbit doll. The little girl seemed thrilled to see her. Oh my goodness, Daddy, I finally found her. Lady of the court, this is the first time I've met you in person. You really do have black hair and purple eyes, just like I heard. It's amazing. The girl, feeling strangely irritated by the intense stare, slammed her hand against the wall beside the girl, trapping her. Hey, why are you here? Don't you know it's rude to barge in without an invitation? The little girl burst into tears. I'm sorry. My daddy told me to come find you. I thought it was okay. The girl sighed, exasperated. This girl was just as much of a crybaby as she remembered from her past life. The little girl was Bella, Duke Bell's youngest daughter. Bella had been constantly compared to her by her father since childhood. Because she couldn't use magic, she was often ridiculed. Though she seemed ditzy, she would later become the youngest chief magician. Thinking about it, Bella was probably forced to come here by her father. She shouldn't have snapped at her. Still, seeing the unstoppable tears, she worried Bella might faint from dehydration. To calm her down, the girl quickly invited her to share some delicious cake. At the mention of cake, Bella stopped crying. The mere act of a blond boy holding his daughter's hand was enough to set the demonic Duke on edge. His precious darling wasn't someone just anyone could lay their eyes on. A while ago, Bella, Duke Bell's daughter, had barged into the girl's room and ended up being scared to tears. To console her, the girl had invited her to have some cake, and the strawberry cake worked its magic. After just a few bites, Bella calmed down. Seeing her finally composed, the girl asked her to explain her visit, and in the next moment, Bella excitedly inquired about her age and her life before returning to the Duke's mansion. Assuming Bella was just a naive child, the girl casually fabricated a story. I'm 5 years old. Before coming back to the Duke's mansion, I lived with a wealthy family in the Free Lands. No sooner had she finished speaking than Bella fixed her with a chilling stare. You're lying. You were a slave at the Viscount's house until you were 5. I know everything. You're a big liar. The girl was stunned. Duke Bell had actually told Bella all of this. What Bella did next was even more astonishing. She gave the girl a creepy smile. If I were as pathetic as you, would Daddy pay more attention to me? With that, she threw her rabbit doll at the girl. Before the girl could react, Bella burst into tears again. Duke Bell rushed in, scooping Bella into his arms. Right there, in front of the girl, they launched into a theatrical display of father-daughter affection. It finally clicked for the girl. She'd initially thought Bella was a sweet, innocent child, but it turned out she was just as manipulative as her father. With this realization, she shoved the rabbit doll back at Bella. Explain yourself. This young lady already has a white cat doll. I don't need your stupid black rabbit. The two of you barged into my room without permission and dared to accuse me of stealing. Someone, get these two insufferable people out of here. Duke Bell, seeing her defiance, started to reprimand her. But before he could utter another word, knights swarmed into the room. Thankfully, the aide arrived just in time to prevent a full-blown brawl. Seeing the aide, Duke Bell regained some of his composure. Agatha, you're just in time. I believe the lady of the court has spent too long as a slave and has become quite ill-mannered. You should discipline her more. The aide, hearing this, glanced at the girl. Duke Bell, he said, you are correct. The girl, seeing the aide seemingly siding with the Duke and his daughter, slumped in defeat. But then, the aide took the rabbit doll from her hand. However, I believe you don't quite understand the Valois family. On Valois land, the Lord is the absolute ruler. Therefore, even if the lady of the court did do something to your daughter, you have no right to criticize her. He then handed the rabbit doll back to Duke Bell. Duke Bell was speechless with rage. The aide continued, his voice calm and collected. If you insist on pursuing this matter, perhaps I should write a letter to summon the Duke back. I'm sure he'd be delighted to discuss this with you personally. At the mention of her father, Duke Bell cowered. He snatched the rabbit doll and hastily retreated with Bella in tow. Thanks to the aide, the incident was resolved smoothly. It also made the girl realize the importance of her father's presence. This sparked an idea about how to handle the Doro Kingdom's aid funds. When the aide returned to the room after dealing with everything, he found a letter from the Duke. 80% of the letter was devoted to praising his daughter, leaving the aide utterly speechless at the Duke's doting nature. As expected, the Duke was planning to skip the regular meeting again. Recalling the day's commotion, the aide decided to inform him anyway. After all, the Duke was deeply concerned about his precious daughter. Moreover, the girl's display of strength and independence gave the aide a glimmer of hope that she might actually be able to change the Valois family's fate. What he didn't know was that the Duke nearly exploded after reading his report. Not only had Duke Bell taken advantage of his absence to bully his daughter, but the most infuriating part was that the little blonde boy he'd taken and had dared to touch her hand. For a doting father, this was absolutely unacceptable. The Duke immediately decided to forego his meeting with the Queen, who had been waiting for him for days, and return home. He would deal with that blonde boy who dared to touch his daughter's hand, determined to revive her family. The girl decided to stop being complacent. This would be the first time she displayed her true abilities to the Branch families. The day of the regular meeting arrived quickly. As the girl hurried towards the meeting room, Lisa rushed after her with some forgotten documents. The aide arrived to escort her just then. He had her double-check for anything else she might have forgotten, and complimented her on her smart, professional attire. Of course, this was thanks to the maid's assistance. Combined with the Valois family pendant, the Black Panther hair tie, and her striking resemblance to the Duke, anyone could recognize her as a Valois princess. The aide carefully examined the documents in her hand. Although he would convey her opinions during the meeting, to show her interest, he had prepared research materials for her in advance. All she had to do was bring the documents, sit in the meeting room, and answer the retainers' questions to make a good impression. The girl hadn't expected the retainers to question her. The aide reassured her, explaining that it was their first time meeting her, so they would naturally have many questions. Upon hearing this, the girl promptly collapsed to the floor, trembling uncontrollably. She was losing her nerve before the meeting even began. How embarrassing. The aide extended a hand. Don't worry, young miss. The retainers don't want a cold-hearted Valois family. They want a Valois family that yearns for revival. Reassured by the aide's words, the girl felt a wave of relief wash over her. She took the aide's hand and headed towards the meeting room. Being the first to arrive, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of nervousness. Still, she tried her best to compose herself. In her memory, the retainers were good people. However, because their leader was her eccentric father, they had always endured hardship. Wherever they went, they faced criticism and judgment. This led to the true downfall of the Valois family after its initial collapse. Everyone, except for Duke Bell, who had always coveted their family's power, distanced themselves from the Valois name. Now, her mission was to protect her family. In that sense, she and the retainers were allies with a shared goal. She hoped her sincerity would reach them. Just then, Viscount Candace entered the room. Disappointment flickered across his face when he saw her father wasn't present. He gave the girl a cursory glance, then brushed past her as if she weren't even there. The other retainers followed suit, grumbling about her father's absence. They began to vote amongst themselves, eager to conclude the seemingly pointless meeting. Seeing them unanimously agree to cut off the Doro Kingdom's aid funds, the girl could no longer remain silent. Gripping the blue rejection chip, she slammed it onto the table. Withdraw that proposal. On behalf of the Valois family, I object to cutting off the Doro Kingdom's aid funds. The thought of how nervous she had been because of these people filled her with annoyance. It felt like none of them truly cared about the family. Her gaze settled on Viscount Candace. His appearance bore a striking resemblance to the Valois direct lineage. He had also been the youngest head of the family in its history, a title he earned due to his exceptional alchemy skills. Remembering the rumors surrounding him from her past life, she asked him about the progress of his recent weapons projects. Viscount Candace was taken aback. He hadn't expected such a young girl to know about this. The aide, equally surprised, whispered, "Young miss, why are you asking him such a private question?" The girl quietly explained to the aide that she wanted to rekindle the retainer's desire to revive the family. The aide expressed his strong approval. Unexpectedly, Viscount Candace began to report his recent achievements to her. He was curious how a 5-year-old girl had become interested in such matters. The girl held up 4 fingers, her expression innocent. "Since I was about 4, she replied. "I learned to read and write when I was 4. I learned about the Valois family situation through the newspapers in the Duke's study. So, please speak your minds. Let's work together to revive the family." That's the purpose of this regular meeting. Determined to teach the blonde boy who dared to touch his daughter's hand a lesson, the Duke even skipped a meeting with the Queen to rush home. But the moment he saw his daughter, he realized nothing else in the world mattered as much as this little one in his arms. Not long ago, the girl had earned the retainer's recognition with her outstanding performance at the regular meeting. Just as he was about to restart the meeting, Marquis Trevelyan proposed expanding their family's transportation business to the southern regions. This would facilitate trade with the free lands. Hearing this, the girl felt a sense of foreboding. She had planned to escape to the free lands eventually. Viscount Candace, sensing her discomfort, urged Marquis Trevelyan to return to the main topic. The purpose of their gathering was to decide whether to withdraw the aid funds from the Doro Kingdom. A retainer with graying hair spoke first. "I believe we should withdraw it. As a defeated nation, they dare to lose contact without authorization. How is that any different from rebellion?" A red-haired retainer agreed, adding that the Valois family should set an example. Seeing the lively atmosphere among the retainers, the aide couldn't help but admire the girl. Just then, Lisa and a servant rushed in. The servant whispered something to the aide, whose expression immediately turned grave. He leaned in close to the girl and informed her that an assassin had infiltrated the mansion. He instructed her to stay put until the threat was eliminated. The aide reassured the retainers and urged them to continue the meeting. Elsewhere, Sion dutifully finished his meal. Ever since the girl had lectured him, he rarely left any food on his plate. This pleased the aide immensely. He instructed Sion to stay put, as it was the day of the regular meeting. Sion, however, was more concerned with whether the girl would be attending. At first, the aide was hesitant to answer, but seeing the icy glint in Sion's eyes, he relented and confirmed that she would be there. Upon receiving this answer, Sion silently turned his head away. Once the aide had left, Sion pulled out the necklace he used to communicate with his master. He recalled his master's specific instructions to bring the necklace to the Valois family's regular meeting, clearly indicating his intention to act during the meeting. Sion was unsure what his master planned to do to the girl. His master had always despised the Valois family. Perhaps he intended to torment her. The thought made Sion uneasy. Before meeting the girl, he had lived a life of constant misery. Now, she had helped him escape that hell. He couldn't stand by and watch her be taken by his master. This time, he would be the one to protect her. Meanwhile, in the meeting room, anxiety filled the air. Despite the aide's best efforts to reassure them, the retainers remained unsettled. The girl, too, was affected by the tense atmosphere and couldn't help but miss her father. Noticing her distress, the aide quickly handed her the prepared research materials. Lady of the court, he said, could you personally convey your opinion? Everyone will listen attentively to what you have to say. Understanding his intention, the girl accepted the responsibility with a serious expression. As a direct descendant of the Valois family, she wouldn't allow herself to be disturbed by a mere assassin. She declared to everyone present that she opposed withdrawing the aid funds from the Doro kingdom. As she had anticipated, her statement was immediately met with questions. Unfazed, the girl calmly guided them. First, she began, as heroes of the war, the Valois family will inevitably take over the Doro kingdom. This means that the people of the Doro kingdom will become citizens of the Valois family. If we withdraw the aid funds, their resentment and desire for revenge will be directed towards the Valois family. The retainers, however, seemed unconcerned. They believed that with the Valois family's strength, they could easily quell any rebellion. Hearing this, the girl nodded in agreement. That's not entirely unreasonable, she conceded. I could agree to withdraw the aid funds, but I don't think the Valois family needs to be the first to act. Instead, let's spread a rumor to Duke Bell's family that the Valois family is preparing to withdraw the aid funds. After all, Duke Bell's family is one of the 4 great families and holds considerable influence. We simply need to wait and see what happens. This plan seemed remarkably prudent. The retainers were curious why she specifically chose Duke Bell's family. The girl explained that she didn't trust Duke Bell as an ally. After all, she reasoned, how can a family that constantly tries to imitate and replace others be loyal to the object of their imitation? If I were the head of the family, she declared, placing a red chip on the table to indicate her stance, I would definitely find a way to eliminate any potential threats. After she placed the chip, the meeting room fell silent, just as the girl began to wonder if she had done something wrong. The retainers showered her with praise for her intelligence and wisdom, even expressing their hope that she would grow up quickly to manage the family. The girl hadn't expected her small scheme to win over the retainers so effectively. It seemed that even misfortune could bring unexpected benefits. After all, this was thanks to her ingrained villainous mindset. In difficult situations, finding a suitable scapegoat was a reliable way to escape unscathed. While somewhat underhanded, it was justified in the name of protecting her family, especially since Duke Bell was hardly a virtuous man. A little underhandedness was a small price to pay. Suddenly, Lisa rushed in to report to the aide about the assassin. To everyone's astonishment, the assassin had apparently vanished. Just as the girl was processing this surprising news, the meeting room window shattered. The aide instinctively shielded the girl in his arms. A moment later, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Her father, radiating a murderous aura, demanded, "Where is that damned blonde brat?" Seeing the room full of startled faces, he realized his entrance had been somewhat dramatic. Nonetheless, he still pointedly asked the aide, "Why are you holding my daughter?" Startled, the aide quickly released the girl. Seeing the chaos her father had caused, the girl could only sigh. She immediately began to scold him. "Why did you leave without saying anything? If you do that again, I'll never speak to you again." In response to her scolding, her father simply offered a faint smile. The fury he had felt moments before had vanished the instant he saw his little girl. His transformation stunned the retainers. Could this doting father truly be the same man they knew? The ruthless, cold-blooded Duke, a demon in the eyes of many. The Valois family's young mistress had nearly been attacked by an assassin. Thankfully, her father had returned home just in time. This incident also made him finally realize the true depth of his daughter's importance in his heart. He decided to finally let go of his deceased wife and dedicate the rest of his life to protecting his precious daughter. Just a short while ago, he had burst into the regular meeting, radiating murderous intent, nearly scaring the wits out of everyone present. But his eyes held only his beloved daughter. He cared nothing for what others thought. "By the way, darling," he began, "I heard you made a new friend recently." Hearing her father mention Sion, the girl immediately launched into an excited introduction. "Yes, Papa, Sion is my first friend. He's a boy with blonde hair, dark eyes, and pale skin. He's as delicate as a porcelain doll." Seeing his daughter's effusive praise for Sion, the purple aura surrounding her father intensified. "Is that so? Hearing you describe him like that, I'm quite curious. Why don't we go and meet him now?" Upon hearing this, the girl immediately jumped down from her father's arms. "Let's go to the treatment room on the 4th floor to find Sion. I was planning to make him my servant as soon as you got back." Hearing this, her father's fists clenched even tighter. The aide, noticing this, had a bad feeling. Just as the father and daughter were about to leave to find Sion, the aide suddenly remembered something and hurried after them. "Your Grace, you still have important matters to attend to." Fortunately, the aide managed to stop the Duke and brought him to examine the assassin's body. The aide explained that by the time the knights had located the assassin after receiving the alert, he was already dead. The Duke lifted the white sheet and carefully examined the wounds on the assassin's body. The wounds didn't appear particularly deep, likely inflicted by a dagger or something similar. Suddenly, the Duke noticed something peculiar. The wound seemed unusually clean, as if cut with scissors. It appears he was killed by an or ability user. It seems things have become more complicated, or was a sharp skill that could only be wielded by those proficient in swordsmanship. It also possessed the unique characteristic of being unable to be combined with other abilities. Because of this, regardless of how powerful one's magic or divine power, no one dared approach an or ability user lightly. However, all or ability users are registered with the Empire. We can investigate them one by one based on the list. We also need to investigate the or ability user's range of activity, including the branch families, especially around the area where the assassin died. Looking at the assassin's body again, the Duke's expression grew grave. If an or ability user had infiltrated the Valois estate, then his daughter, who had been attending the regular meeting at the time, was indeed in grave danger. If the or ability user's target had been his daughter instead of the assassin, he might have lost his precious girl, just like he had lost his beloved wife. He would once again be plunged into the depths of self-blame. The thought made him want to kill his past self. Why had he been so fixated on someone who was already gone while neglecting the living? He truly was a terrible father. Finally, as if having made a firm decision, he instructed the aide to arrange his wife's funeral. Meanwhile, a maid was bringing Sion his dinner. She found the room empty, the window open. Frightened, she rushed to inform someone of Sion's escape. Unbeknownst to her, Sion lay bleeding in agony. Pain consumed his mind, pulling him into unconsciousness. As he drifted, he seemed to return to when he was 5 years old. It was the day he had first been injured during training. He had gone to his master, his arm bleeding, crying for help. "Master, I'm hurt. Please help me." But his master had coldly refused. "Why have you come to me like this? Go to the infirmary and get bandaged and disinfected. Don't come to me again until you're cleaned up." Blood dripped from Sion's hand, mirroring the shattering of his young heart. Later, Sion obediently bandaged his wounds and returned to his master. Seeing him like this, his master patted his head approvingly. But Sion couldn't bring himself to feel happy. And from that day forward, he never cried out in pain again. He knew that crying wouldn't change anything. He had learned that lesson at the tender age of 5. To protect the girl from the assassin, Sion had faced him alone, leaving himself battered and bruised. He had assumed, as always, that no one would care whether he lived or died. But he hadn't expected the girl to cry for him, her tears flowing like a river. Not long after, Sion, near death, was found and rescued. When he awoke, he was in a room, a sharp pain throbbing in his right arm. The girl, seeing Sion awaken, immediately demanded, "How did you get hurt? Did you deal with the assassin? Do you know how worried I was when I heard you were found collapsed in the grass? Why were you so reckless?" Seeing the girl's worried expression, Sion felt a pang of guilt. He couldn't reveal the truth, so he stammered, telling her he'd stumbled upon the assassin by chance. The girl laughed in exasperation. Even if that were true, you should have come to me for help. Hearing this, Sion suddenly thought of his master. In a similar situation, his master would have simply dismissed him. He hadn't expected the girl to care so much. A warmth spread through Sion's chest. I'm fine, Mississippi. The treatment worked. It doesn't hurt anymore. But his reassurance only made the girl cry harder. You always say you're fine. I can't do anything for you. Why do you always lie? It was the same with the steak. You clearly knew how to eat it, but you pretended you didn't. I like you so much, and yet you always hide things from me. It hurts. I'll ask you one last time. Are you in pain? Please answer me honestly. Looking at the girl, so distraught over him, Sion seemed to make a decision. He cradled his arm, tears welling in his eyes, and replied, Actually, it really hurts. My arm hurts, and my shoulder hurts too. Hearing this, the girl immediately embraced him, her voice full of concern. It's okay, Sion. From now on, if you're hurt, just tell me. After they calmed down, the girl handed Sion a healing potion. Sion silently accepted the potion, then addressed the girl again, his voice earnest. Actually, I like you too. The girl froze, stunned. Her face flushed crimson. So, the like you're talking about is like between friends, right? Hearing Sion innocently agree, the girl breathed a sigh of relief. Then, as if remembering something, Sion asked if her offer to take responsibility for him still stood. After she reassured him, he cautiously inquired if he could stay by her side forever. The girl immediately affirmed this, bringing tears of joy to Sion's eyes. He downed a healing potion in one gulp. It was then that the girl remembered the assassin. When Sion heard that the assassin might be from the Doro Kingdom, his heart sank. He quickly asked if she would hate him if he were from the Doro Kingdom. The girl was taken aback. Then, she smiled and patted Sion's shoulder. I wouldn't hate someone as kind as you. With that, she prepared to leave. Before she left, Sion reminded her not to break her promise. The girl was indignant. Did she seem like someone who went back on her word? However, thinking it over, she realized she had made many changes in this, her 100th life. Not only had she resolved the issue of aid funds to the Doro Kingdom, but she had also prevented her father from meeting the Empress. This way, Prince Peter would have no reason to hate the Valois family. But Sion's words still bothered her. Sion wasn't the type to joke. Why would he ask, what if I were from the Doro Kingdom? Did he have some hidden secret? The Duke, once obsessed with resurrecting his wife, finally came to his senses. He decided to give his wife a proper burial and pull himself together. The near-fatal attack on his daughter made him realize that perhaps everything was destined. His wife's death had robbed him of his will to live. But the little angel she left behind gave him a reason to go on. Not long ago, Sion had risked his life to protect his daughter from the assassin, ending up badly injured in the process. While visiting him, the girl had noticed something odd. Sion's casual question, what if I were from the Doro Kingdom? Come to think of it, Sion bore a striking resemblance to Prince Peter, the mixed-blood prince of the Doro Kingdom, whom she had personally killed in her past life. The only difference was their eye color. Coupled with Sion's seemingly innocent question, it made the girl even more curious about his true identity. Lost in thought, the girl was suddenly brought back to reality by the calls of her retainers. Her serious expression had prompted them to remark how much she resembled her father. With the two of them, the Valois family seemed invincible. Glancing at her father, the girl saw the corners of his mouth twitch upwards at the flattery. He looked so smug, a stark contrast to his usual demeanor. Still, his return had put her at ease. Deciding to stop dwelling on Sion and Peter, she focused on concluding the meeting. The Duke suddenly remembered the suggestion his daughter had made at the previous regular meeting. Upon hearing this, she immediately declared her desire to postpone it. She wanted to delay the plan to cancel the Doro Kingdom's aid funds. After speaking, she looked expectantly at her father, fishing for praise. Seeing her adorable expression, the Duke patted her head affectionately. Our little darling is truly amazing, he said. You've even considered the long-term development of our family. He then cast a cold glance at his retainers. So he asked, what are your thoughts on this? The retainers hastily expressed that since the outcome remained the same, they had no objections. They decided to wait for the other families to propose the cancellation first before agreeing. With that matter settled, the Duke announced that he would no longer be absent from the regular meetings. He intended to return to his former state from 5 years ago as soon as possible. Therefore, he expected the retainers' full cooperation in the coming days. Everyone was stunned by his declaration, especially his daughter. Having lived through her past life, she knew the depth of her father's obsession with her mother. He had even sought death from Peter after the Empress, who was also a saintess, had died. His current actions were equivalent to accepting her mother's death. This made her worry about him. But this time, she saw a firm resolve in his once haunted eyes, a determination to protect her. It meant that in this life, her father was changing for her. While this was a joyous occasion, it also brought a pang of heartache. His change would undoubtedly lead to a happy ending, but the pain of losing her mother would never truly fade. Just then, a light drizzle began to fall. Her father rushed over and enveloped her in his cloak. Seeing that she hadn't brought an umbrella, he didn't hesitate to remove it and wrap her tightly within its folds. Witnessing his selfless act, she felt an overwhelming warmth. For the first time in her life, she experienced what it truly meant to be loved by a father. He then led her deep into the garden, where she saw the mother she had longed for. In her past life, her father hadn't planned a funeral for her mother. So, after returning home from the Duke's estate, she had never seen her again. She hadn't expected her father to have preserved her mother so well. This time, he also admitted his fault. "I'm sorry, my darling," he said, "for bringing you to see your mother so late. I did everything I could to save her, but..." Seeing him struggling to speak, his daughter's heart ached. She quickly took his hand and reminisced about the past. "Father," she asked, "did you kiss mother's forehead every night before bed? And did she always nag you about not being a picky eater, especially about broccoli?" The Duke's face immediately scrunched up at the mention of broccoli. They were truly father and daughter. To avoid the dreaded broccoli topic, she asked about their love story. It turned out her father had fallen in love with her mother at first sight after she had saved him. They continued to talk about her mother for a long time. As midnight approached, the girl grew tired. Before falling asleep, she advised her father not to rush her mother's departure. She wanted to wait until she could genuinely smile in front of her mother before saying goodbye. With that, she leaned against her father and drifted off to sleep. Her words resonated deeply with the Duke. Gently holding his daughter's shoulder, he felt immense gratitude towards his wife for leaving him such a heartwarming little angel. The next day, the father and daughter made an unusual request to the head chef, a broccoli feast. They also asked their aide to prepare black tea. This sudden change bewildered both the aide and the head chef. It turned out they wanted to commemorate their wife and mother. She had loved watching them eat broccoli when she was alive, and black tea had been her favorite. Looking back, the Duke realized he had been fixated on saving his wife. This time, he decided to postpone the funeral to properly cherish her memory. However, both father and daughter had clearly overestimated their tolerance for broccoli. When the aide returned with the tea, he found them both lying flat on the table, incapacitated. The renowned Valois family had almost been destroyed by the humble broccoli. After successfully changing her father, the girl decided to make amends with the little chubby bird she hadn't seen in a while. She prepared a luxurious strawberry cake and hand-wrote, "I'm sorry" 100 times. The little chubby bird hadn't visited her for 2 whole months since their falling out over the torn letter. Before that, he had visited every 2 weeks. This made her uneasy. She hoped to see him again soon. She vowed not to be so impulsive in the future. But she didn't expect that after a whole hour of waiting, the little chubby bird was still nowhere to be seen. She was just about to give up and go to bed when she heard the familiar cooing sound. She quickly spotted the little chubby bird collapsed on the table, barely clinging to life. The girl scooped him up in a panic and examined him carefully. Even injured, the little glutton hadn't forgotten about the cake. He even devoured the entire cake in a frenzy and made a full recovery. The girl couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed, but she also remembered to apologize. Fortunately, the little chubby bird had already forgiven her. Hearing this, the girl immediately asked about his recent whereabouts. To her surprise, she learned that the reason the little chubby bird hadn't visited her was because another reincarnator had been interfering with him. The little palace maid, reborn 100 times, attended a banquet with her father for the first time. With her adorable appearance, she quickly won everyone's affection. She also finally met the other reincarnator the little chubby bird had mentioned, the Empress, who had been brutally murdered by her father in her past life. Not long ago, the girl had seen the little chubby bird after a long absence and learned from him that another reincarnator existed in this world. The girl hadn't thought much of it at the time, but the thought of the little chubby bird ignoring her for so long because of this other person infuriated her. To make it up to her, the little chubby bird agreed to answer 3 of her questions. After some questioning, the girl obtained crucial information about the other reincarnator. Firstly, there were the only 2 reincarnators in this world. Secondly, that person seemed to be a crazy nobleman. The little chubby bird had suffered quite a bit at his hands. Lastly, according to the little chubby bird, he was a blonde man. Upon hearing this, a figure suddenly sprang to the girl's mind. It was the Doro Kingdom's mixed-race prince, Peter, who had personally ended her life in her past life. But the Peter she remembered wouldn't bully small animals. Just as she was lost in thought, the little chubby bird suddenly reminded her with a serious expression, "There's something I need to tell you in advance. No matter what the outcome of this life is, it might be a happy ending for some, but it could also be a tragic one for others." The girl thought about her previous 99 lives, where she had always met tragic ends as the villain's daughter. Having finally turned things around in this life, she was determined to protect her happiness. Just then, the little chubby bird suddenly started shivering. The girl quickly fetched a handkerchief and draped it over him. Touched by her gesture, the little chubby bird agreed to answer one more question: how to reply to the gods. Previously, he had flatly refused to answer this question, but just as he was about to reveal the answer, he collapsed on the floor. The girl quickly summoned a doctor to treat him. After a thorough examination, the doctor finally managed to bring down the little chubby bird's fever, and he fell into a deep sleep. The next day, worried about the little chubby bird, the girl kept urging her father, who was busy working, to visit him with her. Just as her father was about to put down his work and go with her, his aide stopped him. "Your Grace," he said, "please don't abandon your work and run off. While you are the head of this household, don't forget that I've been handling your official duties for 5 whole years. If you leave now, I won't do it anymore. I wonder what will become of the Valois family then. For the sake of the child, the Valois family should be stronger." The Duke felt a pang of guilt upon hearing his aide's words. He could only tell his daughter to wait until he finished work. The girl was pleased to see her father working diligently. She never thought she would see him like this again. Just then, a servant brought in a box full of letters. The girl was surprised by the sheer volume of mail. The aide explained with a smile that these were all replies regarding the regular banquet. This would be the girl's first time attending the regular banquet. It was originally held annually, but due to her father's circumstances, it had been 5 years since the last one. The girl recalled her father's unstable state in her past life and the fact that she had always lived in the annex. So, this would indeed be her first time attending such a banquet in both her lives. The thought filled her with excitement. Seeing her enthusiasm, her father immediately instructed the aide to prepare for the banquet, according to the highest standards of the Valois family. Meanwhile, far away in the archipelago, the Empress was feeling uneasy because the Duke hadn't come see her. Her maid informed her that the Duke had indeed visited, but had left due to some unforeseen circumstances. Upon hearing this, the Empress decided to attend the Valois family's regular banquet to investigate. The day of the banquet soon arrived. Early in the morning, Lisa dressed the girl in a beautiful gown, and when they saw her father, dressed up for the first time in a long while, they were almost blinded by his handsomeness. Overwhelmed with excitement, the girl threw herself into her father's arms. Just then, the aide came running over with a cheerful expression. It turned out that despite being the first regular banquet in 5 years, the turnout was far greater than expected. This, however, made the girl uneasy. The previous assassination attempt was still under investigation. Was it really wise to hold a banquet so rashly? But the aide's next words immediately put her mind at ease. It turned out her father had already raised the security level to the highest degree in preparation for the banquet. As expected of her father, he had thought of everything. Now she could finally enjoy the banquet without worry. Father and daughter then appeared before the guests. The nobles, seeing the girl for the first time, remarked on how much she resembled her father. The girl, in turn, was stunned by the banquet's extravagance. At that moment, Count Candace approached to greet them. remembering how he had helped her at the previous banquet. The girl decided to find a small gift to thank him. Suddenly, she spotted a basket of sweets nearby. She quickly grabbed a handful of candies and stuffed them into Count Candace's hands, expressing her gratitude for his help at the regular meeting. Count Candace was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes. Seeing how effective this was, the girl immediately picked up the basket and began distributing candies everywhere, quickly earning everyone's approval. As she searched for her next recipient, she suddenly heard someone announce the Empress's arrival. Meanwhile, Sion retrieved a hidden rose pendant from under his bed and smashed it to pieces. He planned to use the pendant fragments to subtly reveal his true identity to the girl. Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside. Upon learning from a maid that the Empress had arrived at the banquet, he rushed towards the ballroom in a panic. He feared that if he was even a moment late, the girl would be in danger. The Empress, in fact, was his former master. To protect Sion, the girl confronted the Empress, a fellow reincarnator, for the first time. Despite her fear, she stood resolutely in front of Sion. Just a short while ago, the girl had encountered the Empress at the family's regular banquet. Startled, she dropped the basket of sweets and clutched her head in distress. Although she knew she would eventually meet the Empress, it had happened far too quickly. And if her father met the Empress now, would the tragedy of her past life repeat itself? Thinking this, the girl decided to get her father away immediately. In her haste, she tripped over her own feet, landing hard on the floor and becoming the center of attention. Seeing this, her father rushed towards her. By the time the girl tried to stop him, it was too late. The Empress's voice came from behind her. "Goodness, are you all right? Can you stand?" The girl was still pondering how to respond to the Empress when her father scooped her up into his arms. "My daughter, I will help you up myself." As he held her, his gaze met the Empress's. The girl felt a wave of despair. They had met after all, but her father didn't seem as fixated as she had imagined. Instead, he immediately checked her for injuries, briefly greeted the Empress, and then prepared to leave with her in his arms. Just then, the Empress brought up her father's visit to the archipelago. Hearing this, her father stopped. Seeing the situation take a turn for the worse, the girl quickly fabricated a lie. "Father, I think I just saw the aide looking for you. He said it was something important. You should go find him quickly." Seeing his beloved daughter's earnest plea, her father finally stopped dwelling on the Empress's words. The Empress, observing this, glared darkly at their retreating figures. Having successfully steered her father away, the girl felt a pang of guilt, hoping the aide would understand her good intentions. Suddenly, a pair of hands clamped over her mouth. Just as she began to struggle, a familiar voice came from behind her. "Don't move, it's me." It was Sion. Seeing him, the girl immediately began to scold him. "Sion, what are you doing? You scare me half to death." Seeing her energetic demeanor, Sion finally relaxed. "Thank goodness you're all right. Where's the Duke now?" The girl was puzzled by his cryptic question. As they argued, the Empress reappeared. Upon seeing the Empress, Sion stiffened. The girl found his reaction odd, but decided to question him after she had dealt with the Empress. She curtsied to the Empress, who claimed she was merely passing by. However, this was the first time she had met Sion. He didn't look like a nobleman's child, which piqued her curiosity about his identity. Hearing this, the girl quickly shielded Sion. "He was slightly injured due to a mishap on our part and is currently recuperating at our estate." The Empress pondered this. "In that case, how about you give the child to me? I can use my divine power to heal him." The girl's fist clenched involuntarily. Although it was common for nobles to trade slaves in secret, she hadn't expected the Empress to be so blunt. With this thought, the girl immediately refused loudly. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but Sion is my friend. I won't hand him over to anyone." Sion was touched by her words. The Empress simply stared at them coldly for a long moment. Then, she apologized to the girl. "Goodness, I seem to have overstepped. I've taken up your precious time. I do apologize. Well then, I'll excuse myself. I look forward to seeing you again." With that, she turned and left without a backward glance. To prevent his beloved daughter from being swept away by the blonde-haired boy, the Duke tried every means to keep them apart. However, his daughter scolded him for being a bad father, shattering his fragile paternal heart. Not long ago, the Duke's unusual behavior had aroused the Empress's suspicion. She didn't understand why. In this life, the Duke hadn't gone to the archipelago to find her as he had in the past. Perhaps, however, this was the butterfly effect of his rebirth. In his past life, he had been a kind and compassionate saint who strived to fulfill all the people's requests. Their adoration had brought him immense happiness, until the appearance of that crazed Duke. He had wanted him to resurrect his deceased wife. Such a thing, defying the natural order, was beyond his power. In the end, he had died tragically at the hands of the crazed Duke. Fortunately, heaven had shown mercy, and he had been reborn. This time, he spent 5,000 gold coins to purchase Sion, the one who would kill the crazed Duke in the future, as a pawn. Then, he sent him to infiltrate the Duke's mansion. This time, he would exact his revenge on that crazed Duke. But he hadn't expected his wife to betray him one day, and for the sake of revenge, no less. Especially for the Duke's daughter. This made the Empress suspect that the girl might also be a reincarnator. Meanwhile, late at night, the girl stealthily sought out Sion, looking at him with concern. "Sion," she asked, "what's wrong? You've been acting strange ever since you saw the Empress." Sion didn't know how to explain to her, and could only faintly say he was fine. Seeing this, the girl cupped his face in her hands. "Cheer up, Sion. Even though I don't know what's troubling you, I'll always protect you." Sion gently removed her hands. "It's not like that. I'm the one who should be protecting you." Just as the girl was puzzled by his words, Sion suddenly pulled out a small fragment and handed it to her. He hoped she could guess what the fragment represented. It was a secret game between the two of them. He instructed her to keep the fragment safe and not let anyone see it. Back in her room, the girl stared at the fragment, racking her brains, but unable to figure out what it was. So, she decided to put the fragment aside for now and asked her father to let Sion stay at the Duke's mansion tomorrow. However, her father flatly refused. Frustrated, the girl put her hands on her hips and yelled, "Father, I'm a direct descendant of the Valois family. I have a right to have Sion as my servant." The Duke hadn't expected his little girl to challenge him. If his wife were to see this, she would surely be pleased. With this thought, he finally relented. Hearing his agreement, the girl immediately threw herself into his arms. "Father, you're the best." Then she ran to Sion and interlocked their fingers. "Great, Sion, you can work at our house from now on." Excitedly, she was about to run off and share the good news with everyone else. Sion tried to stop her, but suddenly felt a sharp pain in his right arm. The Duke, noticing his discomfort, instantly summoned a surge of purplish-black magic. "Boy, how did your arm get injured?" Sion nervously claimed it was just an old injury from an assassin. The Duke was highly skeptical. Such a small child, escaping from a trained assassin. Then, he suddenly detected an unusual aura emanating from Sion's chest. He immediately used his magic to restrain Sion. He quickly found the communication necklace hanging around Sion's neck. The Duke shattered the necklace with his magic and gave Sion 1 week to leave the mansion. If it weren't for his daughter, the Duke would have likely killed Sion on the spot. Sion was terrified. He had promised the girl they would be together forever. But now, he couldn't even protect himself. Perhaps leaving wasn't such a bad thing. He would return and fulfill their promise when he was strong enough. The moment the necklace shattered, the Empress sensed something was amiss. The thought that her father might already suspect Sion's identity prompted her to change her plans. She took out another communication stone and contacted Sion's mother. She intended to use Sion's mother to abduct both Sion and the girl, offering 5,000 gold coins as a reward. Sion's mother agreed without hesitation. After all, the Doro kingdom was currently facing financial ruin. Moreover, they deeply resented the Valois family. The Empress successfully exploited this resentment to her advantage. Furthermore, even if they failed, no one would suspect her involvement. The next day, the girl excitedly prepared to congratulate Sion on officially becoming a servant of the Valois family. Seeing him looking dashing in his uniform, she rushed forward and grabbed his hand. "This uniform really suits you, Sion. Congratulations on becoming a servant of the Valois family. But where are you going now?" Upon learning that Sion was going to clean the new annex, the girl immediately offered to accompany him. Sion worried that her father would be angry, but the girl told him not to worry, reminding him that her father was no match for her. Hand in hand, they walked toward the annex. Along the way, they attracted the attention of many knights. Sion suddenly felt a little concerned about the Valois family security system. After all, the previous assassination attempt had been incredibly dangerous. The girl reassured Sion, telling him not to worry too much. The Valois knights were much stronger than him. Hearing this, Sion gave a melancholic smile. "Is that really so? "Oh, right, I have something for you." The girl accepted the gift box and found another fragment, identical to the one from yesterday. This immediately disheartened her. She didn't understand why Sion kept giving her the same thing. Seeing her reaction, Sion spoke seriously. "I'm giving you these fragments because I want you to understand their meaning." The girl was taken aback by his earnest expression. She couldn't comprehend what special meaning a small fragment could possibly hold. Sion simply told her to study hard in the future. Just as the girl was bewildered by his strange behavior, the aide suddenly appeared and separated them. "Young miss, the Duke has ordered that you two are not to be together." The girl was about to ask the aide to keep their meeting a secret when her father appeared behind them, his face grim. This was the opposite direction of his office. The Duke was going to great lengths to keep Sion away from his daughter, especially after hearing that Sion had held the girl's hand. He practically wanted to chop their hands off. The girl couldn't stand her father's constant antagonism towards Sion any longer. She pushed her father away. "Father, why do you keep separating Sion and me? I told you I like him. I hate how you treat someone I like. You're a bad father." With that, she grabbed Sion's hand and stormed off without looking back. The Duke was left standing there, stunned. Everything he did was for her own good. He couldn't allow that dangerous slave to stay by her side. As Sion was pulled away by the girl, he mouthed to the Duke, "I will keep my promise to leave in a week." Although the boy seemed polite, no father would appreciate someone trying to steal his daughter, especially a blonde-haired boy. The girl's long-awaited twin brothers finally returned home. But she wasn't as happy as she'd imagined. She had discovered that her beloved Sion was the mixed-race prince who had annihilated her entire family in her past life. And yet, in this life, he had risked himself to save her. Not long ago, the girl had argued with her father about Sion. This made her father deeply worried about her safety. So, he immediately dispatched his aide to investigate Sion's background. The aide searched the Viscount's house high and low, but couldn't find any record of Sion as a slave. Generally, there were only two possibilities in such a situation. Either Sion had no record at all, or someone had stolen his records. The Duke pondered this, then inquired about the Viscountess's whereabouts. Upon learning that she was currently in a coastal nation known for facilitating escapes, the Duke decided to investigate personally. Just as he was about to leave, he remembered the girl's previous plea not to leave without saying goodbye. He instructed his aide to tell her he was attending a banquet and would return soon. Meanwhile, the girl was busy tending to the little chubby bird, who was fast asleep. She glanced at the two fragments Sion had given her. The pattern on the fragments looked a little like a flower and a little like a whirlwind. It seemed familiar somehow, but she couldn't quite place it, just as she was wondering if she should ask Sion for a hint. She thought she heard Sion calling her name, but when she looked around, there was no one in the room. Then, a familiar figure appeared on the windowsill. "You heard right. I came because I missed you." It really was Sion. The girl immediately urged him to come down. "Sion, how did you get up there? What if someone sees you? Come down quickly." Sion didn't rush. "It won't happen again. More importantly, there's something I need to tell you. From today onwards, I won't be working as a servant anymore." The girl was instantly distraught. "Why are you suddenly quitting? Did father threaten you?" Sion quickly explained, "It's not like that. I've found my family. They live a bit far away, so I have to leave today." A wave of sadness washed over the girl. She had thought they could be together forever. Forcing a smile, she told Sion to remember to bring his family to visit sometime. She then invited him to have one last meal together. But when she turned around, Sion was gone from the windowsill. He had just promised to eat with her. Why had he left so abruptly? She hadn't even had a chance to say goodbye properly. When Lisa entered the room, she found the girl in tears, her face a picture of misery. Seeing Lisa, the girl began to cry even harder. Now she was alone again. As the daughter of a villain, she didn't deserve to have friends. No matter how hard she tried, everyone would eventually leave her, just like in her past life. As the girl's sadness overwhelmed her, Lisa pulled her into a hug. "My lady, you are not alone. You have the aide, the knights, and the Duke who loves you. And no matter what happens, I'll always be by your side. I'll be sure to bring back that rude little blonde boy. So please stop blaming yourself. And if you keep crying, your eyes will swell up like a crucian carp's." Hearing this, the girl finally stopped crying. "I'm not a crucian carp." Seeing the girl's renewed energy, Lisa was relieved and immediately suggested they go have some dessert. But just as Lisa turned away, a strange magic circle appeared beneath the girl's feet. Then, she vanished into thin air. The next moment, the girl was awakened by a familiar voice. Opening her eyes, she saw that it was Sion, who had just disappeared. Seeing her awake, Sion breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness, you're finally awake. I was so worried. The girl realized she was somehow in the courtyard. Indignantly, she demanded, "Why did you leave so suddenly? And why am I here?" Sion quickly covered her chattering mouth. "I'm sorry, my lady. I'll explain everything later. Right now, we need to." Sion didn't finish his sentence. A furious roar echoed from nearby. "Where are you hiding? Come out if you don't want to get hurt." The girl, seeing the aggressive man, asked, bewildered, "Who is that?" Sion stammered, "He's the kidnapper who tried to take us. If he finds us, who knows what will happen? You need to get out of here now." With that, Sion clutched his stomach in pain. The girl then realized that he was injured, but Sion urged her not to worry, saying he would buy her time to escape. Luckily, they weren't far from the Duke's mansion. If she ran, the knights would find her. But the girl firmly refused to run. She couldn't leave Sion alone. As they stood there, the kidnapper appeared behind them. "I'm already annoyed, and you dare to scurry around like rats." He kicked Sion to the ground. "I worked so hard to bring the young miss here, and you little brat, try to help her escape." Seeing this, the girl clung to the kidnapper's leg. "Don't you bully Sion." Enraged, the kidnapper grabbed her by the throat. "Just how many protective barriers does your family have? Do you know how difficult it was to activate the magic circle without being detected?" Seeing the girl struggling, the kidnapper sneered. "You look so pathetic. A direct descendant of the Valois family, and you don't even have any magic power." Suddenly, the kidnapper noticed the commotion in the distance. Realizing the knights had discovered them, Sion shakily got to his feet. The kidnapper immediately cast a teleportation spell, threatening to strangle the girl if Sion didn't follow. Seeing the girl's pain, ignoring his pain, Sion lunged forward, pulling at the kidnapper, begging him to release the girl. The kidnapper's grip tightened, and the girl's consciousness began to fade. Was this how she was going to die? She had finally mended her relationship with her father. There were still so many things she wanted to do with him. She wanted to live. Suddenly, Sion pulled out a dagger and plunged it into the kidnapper's abdomen. "I told you to let her go," Sion roared. The kidnapper finally released his grip. In that split second, the girl saw Sion's eyes flash gold. She heard him murmur, "My lady, I'm sorry." Then, both Sion and the kidnapper vanished. The girl collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Remembering those familiar golden eyes, a realization struck her. Sion was Peter. That kind, shy boy was the one who had annihilated his family in her past life. The thought filled her with uncertainty about the future. Just then, she heard the voices of two boys. "Are you sure it's here?" "Yes, this is where I sensed it. But there's nothing here except this kid. Why is she sitting on the ground? We should ask her." The girl stared up at the two boys, one with pink hair and the other with blue eyes. Her twin older brothers had returned.